Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Tuesday matinee pre-Thanksgiving Day edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here, of course, with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
Pleasure to see you all here this afternoon. This is
Save a turkey, eat a vegan.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, this is our final show before the Thanksgiving break. We will not be on Thursday morning, so no morning show this week because Thursday is Thanksgiving Day. We do have a special patron stream for all the cool kids, all the patrons, tomorrow at noon. We'll do a few fun segments, and then we will take your calls to get a nice group chat in before the holiday. So that is the plan this week. And then we do have movie nights on Saturday. That'll be the Saturday before the Sunday show, obviously. So we are still on for the Sunday show this weekend, obviously. And in fact, we will see our paid members before that for movie night. So right now it looks like we're going to have an oldie but a goodie for movie night, right?
I think we are going to do Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So I think for these movie nights, we're going to do a mix of kind of historical films that we can analyze for how similar their issues were to what we have now and how they were different. I'm also planning on doing a Face in the Crowd at some point. Maybe the Grapes of Wrath. And then we'll also mix that in with fun stuff like Conspiracy. That's the name of that film, right?
Yeah.
Conspiracy, Society. Maybe we'll do Eating Raoul since so many of you actually know that film.
Yeah, there you go. That
Although
might be
there
fun.
are boobies, I don't think we can do that on Rumble.
Yeah, we have to have.
That's
there is a nudity restriction. Yeah.
Yeah, Bob Roberts, I would like to do.
Yeah, I was just looking up the runtime for Grapes of Wrath. It's actually not that long. The book is very long, but the movie's like 2 hours. So yeah, that's doable. I was about to say, like a 4-hour movie for movie night would be tough because we stop it a lot.
Gandhi.
Comment and that, yeah, right. Yeah, it's a 9-hour stream. It'd be big.
We're doing Warhol Sleep.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. Warhol Sleep. That's right. All right, everybody. Well, hey, thanks for being here today. Nice crowd to start the show here. 531 strong on Rumble, 503 strong in the YouTube chat. Appreciate that very much. We do have a bunch of stuff that we're going to get to today before we bid you adieu for the short holiday weekend here. We've been covering the ICC's arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. And we heard from Lindsey Graham yesterday. We've heard from various senators, congresspeople, world leaders, different reactions to it. But now we're going to hear from the Washington Post editorial board. That's right. The editorial board of the Washington Post decided this was urgent enough that they should give an official opinion on behalf of the newspaper. And according to the Washington Post, the International Criminal Court is not the venue to hold Israel to account. They write, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has used chemical weapons and waged a bloody campaign of ethnic cleansing in his brutal suppression of an uprising that has killed 500,000 people, many of them civilians. In Myanmar, military dictator General Min Aung Hlaing, how do you say that? I never knew how to say that last name. How to pronounce that name.
I am not sure.
Yeah, yo, did you realize how many people knew how to say Seychelles? Those islands.
Apparently,
a lot of people in the audience.
We're still getting people.
A lot of people in the
on
audience knew how to say Seychelles. I had never heard of that. Apparently, it's a group of islands like off the eastern coast of Africa, like in the Indian Ocean. Very obscure island country, group of islands. Very, very strange. Like, how did so many of our audience know that? That seems like such a bizarre and obscure fact to know. I think it's like Epstein Island, but for Uyghurs. I think that's where the tankies fly to fuck Uyghurs. That's how they know. That's how our audience knows about it.
Let's look into it.
Because why else would anyone know? Why else would that many people know what Seychelles is?
It's very weird because, we're not experts on geography, but we're not quite as ignorant as the average American, and neither one of us knew how to say it.
I never heard of the place.
So folks in the chat, all right, so now I realize why. They were saying this on RBN last night, that my volume was low. I just realized the app, I had it set to manual instead of auto.
Oh, yeah. It did seem low to me, too, but I thought maybe it was just my volume on mine.
So how is it now?
Sounds good now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We really need to do tech checks before the show. All right, so folks in the chat, this fixed?
It sounds louder to me now.
Yeah,
so that should be good.
All right, so now it's on auto. It's on my normal settings now.
All right.
Yeah, after I rebooted with new software, it defaulted to manual, and I didn't realize.
Nice. All right, there you go. Yep, sounds good now. Chat says good, Russell. Beautiful. Thanks, Nocturnal Humor.
All right, there we go.
All right. In Myanmar, military dictator General Min Aung Hlaing and his army have been responsible for bombing civilian villages in its war against the long-persecuted Rohingya minority. And in Sudan, a new potential genocide threatens the Darfur region's black Masalit people at the hands of General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, who is known as Hemedi, and his rapid support forces. So who does the International Criminal Court wish to arrest for war crimes? The white guy. The white guy, that's right. My editorial, not theirs. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense chief Yoav Gallant. Yes, the woke mind virus has infected the International Criminal Court. They're coming after white criminals. Yeah, notice all those other examples that they just listed there. Non-white. Non-white. So non-white that we did not know really how to say their names. But yes, according to the Washington Post, who does the ICC wish to arrest for war crimes? Netanyahu and Gallant. Israel is not a member of the ICC, and the warrants will have limited practical effect, except possibly preventing Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant from traveling to countries which have pledged to enforce it. We say possibly because countries in the past have promised to uphold ICC arrest orders only to ignore them when convenient. Several European countries and Canada have suggested they would uphold the latest arrest orders. Others have balked. But the arrest orders undermine the ICC's credibility and give credence to accusations of hypocrisy and selective prosecution. Wow. You talk about up is down, war is peace, ignorance is strength. I mean, that is a hell of a sentence to write there and feel like, yeah, that's good to go. That's good to go. This whole article argues for a double standard. The thesis of this article is that international law is for black and brown people. That's basically what they're arguing here. Yeah. The ICC is putting the elected leaders of a democratic country with its own independent judiciary in the same category as dictators and authoritarians who kill with impunity. Israel went to war in response to the Hamas attack of October 7th, which left 1,200 Israelis dead and another 250 taken hostage, around 100 of whom still remain captive. The ICC's arrest warrant for one of the authors of that massacre, Hamas leader Mohammed Daif, who was probably killed in an Israeli airstrike months ago, looks more like false equivalence than genuine balance. There was another...
Sure, it is false equivalence if you look at the death toll.
Right. If you look at the death toll, absolutely. If you look at the numbers, to be sure, far too many, and I love how they put in, now as a caveat, to be sure, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed and maimed in Israel's 13-month-long war against Hamas, More than 44,000 have died, which is a joke of an estimate. It was 40,000 as of January of this year. They stopped taking an official
they stopped
count.
counting because they can't.
Because they can't. Right, exactly. So 44 is just a joke of a number.
Yes. Yeah. They're not killing anyone now.
Right, yeah, exactly. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, which does not distinguish between civilians and combatants, it says more than half of the fatalities have been women and children. According to the latest UN report, which is current data, 70% women and children, 44% children, 26% women. So you're kind of underselling it there. It's 70% women and children. The vast majority of deaths have been women and children. The Israeli military says it has killed 17,000 militants, though its basis for that is unclear. Even if accurate, it implies more than 60% killed have been non-combatants.
Okay.
Hamas is... Yeah.
Go on.
Yes. Yeah. Hamas is to blame for sheltering among civilians and hiding their weapons in command centers and tunnels beneath populated areas, like the Al-Shifa hospital, which the Washington Post, their own investigation showed that was a lie that Israel told to justify destroying that hospital. Their own paper investigated that and said, no, this turned out to not be true. But Israel, as a democratic country that is committed to human rights, must take responsibility for the civilian casualty toll. Oh, well, that's big of you. Now, here's how they should be held responsible, though. Israel needs to be held accountable for its military conduct in Gaza. After the conflict's end, which is long overdue, there will no doubt be Israeli judicial, parliamentary, and military commissions of inquiry. Why do you say there's no doubt? Like, why do you say they will investigate? On what basis do you claim they are? Oh, yeah, well, of course they're going to investigate themselves. Why wouldn't they? Like, how could you take that for granted as a certainty? That, oh, yeah, no, surely they'll look into it. Surely they will prosecute themselves after this. I mean, that's just a ridiculous thing.
Sure. The country that executes journalists and then, 5 years later, 6 years later, when no one's paying attention. Yeah, we probably whacked them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it goes on.
That kind of inquiry? I guess that's what they mean.
Israel's vibrant, independent media will do its own investigations.
Oh, the independent media that they just voted to boycott.
Yes.
In the case of Haaretz, its oldest newspaper.
Yep. Israel has voted now to boycott their oldest newspaper. That vibrant, independent media will do its own investigations. Some Israeli reserve soldiers have already been arrested over accusations of abuse against Palestinian detainees. More investigations will follow. The ICC is supposed to become involved when countries have no means or mechanisms to investigate themselves. That is not the case in Israel. Have they not demonstrated a complete unwillingness and disinterest to and in investigating themselves? Like, what makes you think they are going to look into this themselves? What makes you think they have any remorse for anything they've done? The United States has long had an ambivalent relationship with the ICC. It refuses to be a party to the court for fear of politically motivated prosecutions against U.S. service members overseas. Again, man, I mean,
we're not going to be able to rape and kill people with impunity.
Yeah. Politically motivated prosecutions. The United States has long had an ambivalent relationship because it commits a lot of war crimes. So that's the thing. We're hesitant to join as a party to the Rome Statute because we do a lot of war crimes. Yeah. But at times, it has encouraged the
stock
ICC.
and trade, the war crimes.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, this article is just amazing. But at times, it has encouraged the ICC and lent support, as in the case of war crimes against Vladimir Putin for his invasion of Ukraine. But when it suits our narrative
against our
of Western supremacy,
enemy. This is really, whenever we get into an article like this, it really, you want to understand why your lib ant is only a little smarter than your dog, if that.
Right.
This is why.
Yeah.
This is why. I literally, that's what turned me on to that article. They just dropped an article in the Times about how the temptation in the face of Donald Trump's election is to go into internal exile. And the whole conceit is about how certain Russians reacted to Putin's assumption of power in 2012 after having kind of been in the background as a prime minister assuming power. What they're not telling you is what I think we have credible evidence to believe is the majority of Russians who, after years of ass raping by Goldman Sachs and company, were very glad to let Putin come in, take over, so that their daughters didn't have to trade their virtue for eggs anymore. This is why the libs think like this, because they are programmed with these kinds of just completely propagandistic narratives that they're too ignorant to really parse out. But because Washington Post, New York Times, they're sold and they're coded as what a smart, educated person would know, they don't feel any need to look further than this. And what's the incentive? To be at odds with the other libs?
Right, exactly. There's no social payoff. But
Right.
I just want to read that paragraph once more, because that kind of says it all. The United States has long had an ambivalent relationship with the ICC. It refuses to be a party to the court for fear of politically motivated prosecutions against U.S. service members overseas. But at times it has encouraged the ICC and lent support, as in the case of war crimes against Vladimir Putin for his invasion of Ukraine. They're just spelling out in plain English that when convenient to enforce narratives of Western supremacy, we will prop up the ICC. But we won't join it because we're afraid it might be wielded as a political weapon against U.S. service members. I mean, this is just a very, very obvious argument for selective enforcement of international law based on who's in the club and who is not. President-elect Donald Trump in his first term took a hostile stance towards the ICC. Mr. Trump imposed travel sanctions against ICC prosecutors and staff, which President Joe Biden lifted. The ill-considered arrest warrants against Israel only give Mr. Trump a new reason to halt American cooperation with the court at a time when it's needed for Russia, Sudan, Myanmar, and conflicts elsewhere, that atrocities are being committed with impunity and the victims have no other recourse. So they're saying you don't want to undermine the court because we need the court to wield as a cudgel against the black countries and the Russians. So you better lay off the white country that's doing the war crime because we need the court to go after the black and the brown countries. I mean, that is just stunning. That is just absolutely stunning. And you're right. That's how your lib relatives are as dumb and as deluded as they are. Remember that this Thanksgiving, if you get into an argument, they will read that, they will absorb that. The ones that haven't boycotted Washington Post over their refusal to endorse Kamala Harris. That's the thing.
That's the funny thing.
That's the funny thing. They jumped ship because they wouldn't endorse Kamala. How many would boycott over this? None. They'd absorb that like a sponge. They would absorb that. They would internalize that, and they would tell it back to you if you ever argued with them about it. Well, they shouldn't have done that. It was very stupid of the ICC to move against Netanyahu because we need them to fight against Putin. That's exactly what they say, that with a dead serious look on their face. They look you straight in the eye as if they were imparting some sage wisdom onto you. Yes.
Exactly. No, all of these libs, it is amazing. You want to see propaganda. They all have absorbed the idea that what's happening in Ukraine is the worst thing that ever happened, and Putin is the worst villain on earth today. They have no understanding of how many deaths we are responsible for and have been responsible for by comparison to Russia. Certainly no understanding of how we provoked Russia into that war. The New York Times article I was mentioning, it presents Putin invading Ukraine as the rebuke to the Russians who decided to ignore his autocratic rule in order to have comfortable lives for themselves. You see how this ended? Look at what he did in the end. See, you may not want to be involved with politics, but politics will find you.
Right.
Absolutely no context to what led to that. Really just the presentation of this autocratic madman took over that most of the Russian people didn't want. And now look where he's led them. It's just insane. And then, you're right. They'll read this and they'll come away from it saying, it's with genocide, usually the libs, unless they're real Zionists, don't want to endorse that. They'll say it's complicated. It's a very complicated situation. And, the question is it really helpful? is it really helpful for them to say this?
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, they won't actually want to take a strong position in the other direction. They'll just say it was not smart of them to do that. They shouldn't have picked that fight. Was not strategic. It was very imprudent of them to do that. That's exactly the
we have other means. We have other means. There are back channels.
Right.
You know,
right.
Ways of dealing with it. You know, you make that kind of statement. What are they going to do? They're just going to withdraw. They're just going to withdraw. You have to engage.
Yeah.
These people, they all talk because that's a big part of the lore. They talk like they're politically sophisticated.
Right.
Like they know what's going. I literally had a lib during COVID say to me about them not releasing the patents.
Right.
Which at that time, all the libs were like, these vaccines are a miracle of modern science. And I said, well, then why won't they release the patents? Why is it more important for them to protect their profit margins if this is something we need to save the world? That's not how the game is played. How fucking indoctrinated do you have to be to talk like you're a fucking you're a pharma rep? Like you're an insider. Yeah, they're not gonna build roads and distribute, baby.
You're on an elevator.
How it works.
You're on an elevator like this. That's not how the game is played.
Yeah, like they're insiders. They're insiders. Exactly. You know, they were just on the phone with the chief financial officer at Merck.
Yeah, exactly. Could you mind saying that again? I couldn't hear you through the 3 pizza cloths that you have tied around your face about how the game is supposed to be played. Yeah. No, that is funny. That is a funny one. I never heard that one. That's good. That's how the game is played.
Yeah. No. Well, that is a big part of the lore of things like Morning Joe. It makes peons think they're players.
Right.
That's a big part of the allure of what is clearly just a historical propagandistic nonsense. You get to pretend you're an insider.
Exactly. That is a huge part of it. That is really the main product of corporate media, is the feeling that you are you have been anointed with the secret knowledge.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes. All right. Hey, speaking of secret knowledge and speaking of politics, hey guys, we have a very special Thanksgiving version of this ad copy for you for Stephen Cole's Full Crazy Town. So as the Thanksgiving holiday is drawing nigh, it's time to prepare for the expected awkward encounters. There are many ways for effective communication to be thwarted. First, the peacekeeper, usually mom or grandma, will say something like, "Oh, let's not spoil Thanksgiving with arguments," to which the response is, "We're just debating." Second, someone will try and change the subject. Response, expose the effort for what it is and attempt to hijack the narrative. Third, word salads before the main course, then gobbledygook with all the trimmings, and finally obfuscation for dessert. Good luck trying to get your point across. Remember, not giving up plus time equals goal attainment. So tune in to the Full Crazy Town podcast every Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific until 4 p.m. Pacific, which is 7 Eastern, coinky-dinky enough, exactly when Due Dissidence starts. So, Stephen, thank you for crafting your podcast to be the opener for ours. And you can get his book and subscribe to his podcast at fullcrazytown.com. Thank you very much, Stephen. Go subscribe to that podcast. That's fun. And pick up his book if you can, and support our fellow dissident creators. All righty.
Mary Ploppins here says she's trying to run an ad.
Who's trying to run an ad?
She says, check our sponsorship form. I'm trying to run an ad. Mary Ploppins here in the chat.
Okay. Did you recently email us? If it was a book, we have, if it's a book, I think I got back to someone about music. If it's a book, one of our book advertisers is ending their campaign this month, so I'll bring in another book. I don't want to, in fairness to the advertisers, run 6 book ads at once, because then they're competing with the other partners, basically. Right. The book ad, one of our book partners is ending their campaign this month, so I will definitely start you up next month for the holidays. We're not even charging premium rates for the.
Yeah,
for the
she
holidays.
says a book. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. All right. So if it was a book, there was a bit of a wait list, but you're probably next. Okay. All right, let's keep going right here. All right, so let's take some super chats and Rumble rants. JM, thanks for the $2 and the thumbs up over on YouTube. Big crowd now filing in, 1,100 strong in YouTube, 846 on Rumble. Please smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, that follow button. Tony Derg, thanks for the £2. Keir Starmer has a toupeed ham for a head. He looks like an old friend of mine. That guy. He looks like the Dilbert cartoon too, kind of. Keir Starmer. All right, who else we got here? We got Jamie Starr. Thanks for the $5. I liked you guys from the first time I saw Pasta bring you on Jimmy's show last year. That's right. Thank you. That was just over a year ago. Thanks for keeping me grounded and expanding my mind as I continue my journey from the right. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Hillary Hinton, and the bullets fly, the rivers run dry, and the fat girls sigh, and the network anchor persons lie. Roger Waters, What God Wants, Part 3.
You know, I was not crazy about that particular album. I'm a much bigger fan of... That was one of his later solo ones. I'm a big fan of Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. That's a great album. Huh. But What God Wants, I was not that. Well, that's off. Isn't that off Amused to Death? What God Wants.
I don't really know his solo stuff that well. Yeah,
I was not crazy about the ones after Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. But that album is great. That's great. That's peak Roger Waters.
There you go. All right, I'll have to check that one out. I don't really know his solo stuff very well. I know Seychelles from the periscope of a submarine when the surface battle group got a week of liberty. There you go, TS Crasher. Thank you. Many audience members know about Seychelles because of all the Canadians in the house. We have good geography education. All right, there you go. You guys know Seychelles. It is a very obscure. I had never even, not only did I not know where it was or how to say it, I didn't know what it was. I had never heard of the place. The Seychelles are a Mandela effect.
A lot of Amused to Death fans. Yeah. All right.
All right.
I gotta ask. So people who like to Amused to Death, are you on the younger side? Because I think a lot of us that came up with Pink Floyd considered it a change of gear that we didn't like. So it might be generational.
Right. Yeah, that could be too. The Seychelles are a Mandela effect. They only exist in the new Kern created timeline with the Berenstein Bears. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that. All right. Here we go. What do we got here? Oh, yeah. Ken Minji. Can you do Showgirls for movie night? It's about capitalism. Yeah. In America, everyone's a gynecologist. Thank you, Ken.
Right. That was the other one. Radio Chaos. Yeah, I didn't like either of those.
All right. George says, I'm sorry, Keaton, you weren't even close. It's spelled Lang, but it's pronounced Kensington. Hope that helps. Loud in Haifa tonight. Peace, please. Peace to you, George. Thank you very much. All right.
We got a 51-year-old guy says he thinks it's a brilliant. All right. Yeah, I didn't dig it. My friends didn't dig it. That's why I thought maybe it's generational. Like other friends of mine who liked Pink Floyd and liked Pros and Cons didn't like that album. Like it was a pretty common take.
Interesting. All right, we're going to move right on along here. So, folks, we talked about Lindsey Graham in the last show. He is really on a roll. Lindsey Graham, last time we heard from him, was threatening our allies with sanctions over defying the ICC's arrest warrant against Netanyahu. But here he is, again, Lindsey Graham spills the beans talking about the war in Ukraine, saying, hey, this is about money and rare earth minerals. Here he is.
Is still standing. Ukraine is still standing. This war is about money. People don't talk much about it. But you know the richest country in all of Europe for rare earth minerals is Ukraine. $2 to $7 trillion worth of minerals that are rare earth minerals, very relevant to the 21st century. Ukraine's ready to do a deal with us, not the Russians. So it's in our interest to make sure that Russia doesn't take over the place. It's the breadbasket of really the developing world. 50% of all the food going to Africa comes out of Ukraine. We can make money and have an economic relationship with Ukraine that'd be very beneficial to us with peace. So Donald Trump's going to do a deal to get our money back, to enrich ourselves with rare earth minerals, a good deal for Ukraine and us. And he's going to bring peace. And Biden's been a disaster when it comes to containing bad guys.
We're going to make money. We're gonna make money off of this here war.
We're gonna make. And by us, I don't mean you, the American people. I mean us. I mean politicians and the people who pay politicians are gonna make a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there you hear it, pretty naked. You know, Joe Scarborough said something similar. It's good for American businesses, meaning defense contractors. But, of course, a lot of defense contractors, a lot of military operational organizations and businesses use a lot of these rare earth minerals as well. So this is something that you haven't heard much discussion of because it's not something they love to necessarily lead with, you know, the peace and freedom and rules-based order, you know, that's a better propaganda tool than lithium. But there is some truth to what he's saying, actually. Our friends over at the World Economic Forum put this paper out on July 9th, 2024. They published this blog, if you will, to their website. The Future of Critical Raw Materials, How Ukraine Plays a Strategic Role in Global Supply Chains.
You will wipe out a generation and be happy.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. Exactly. You will have no children and be happy. Geopolitical challenges, including the Russian invasion of Ukraine, China-U.S. competition, elections, and the war in Israel, significantly impact the global supply chain, especially critical raw materials vital for traditional industries, defense, high-tech sectors, aerospace, and green energy. Democracies rely on essential critical raw materials such as nickel, lithium, and aluminum. I love how they say democracies rely on essential critical raw materials, not economies, democracies. Everything is coded as we are the virtuous ones. This is democratic lithium, democratic nickel, democratic aluminum.
Look, it says democracy right on the bag.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes, exactly. The market for critical minerals has doubled to over $320 billion in the last 5 years and is expected to double again in the next 5. Despite the ongoing challenges, Ukraine holds immense potential as a major global supplier of critical raw materials essential for these high-profile industries. With vast reserves of minerals, Ukraine can significantly contribute to the global supply chain for many or all of them. The disruption caused by the Russian invasion and competing suppliers such as China has highlighted the need for resilient and diversified supply chains. So they're not just competing with Russia, competing with China as well. This has prompted the EU and the United States to adopt strategies to reduce dependency on non-democratic regimes. Leveraging Ukraine's resources can bolster these efforts, driving Europe's green transition and supporting Ukraine's post-war recovery. Ukraine is a potential key supplier of rare earth metals, including titanium, lithium, beryllium, manganese, gallium, uranium, zirconium, graphite, apatite, fluorite, and nickel. See, I can pronounce those very well. I can rattle those off one by one.
Boom.
Boom. Despite the war, Ukraine holds the largest titanium reserves in Europe, 7% of the world's reserves. It is one of the few countries that mine titanium ores, crucial for the aerospace, medical, automotive, and marine industries. Before February 2022, Ukraine was a key titanium supplier for the military sector. It also has one of Europe's largest confirmed lithium reserves, estimated at 500,000 tons, vital for batteries, ceramics, and glass. Ukraine is the world's 5th largest gallium producer, essential for semiconductors and LEDs, and has been a major producer of neon gas, supplying 90% of the highly purified semiconductor-grade neon for the U.S. chip industry. Additionally, Ukraine holds significant reserves of non-ferrous metals such as copper, lead, zinc, and silver. Nickel deposits and cobalt are found in the secure Kirovrad and, wow, that's a hard one, Dnipropetrovsk regions. Wow. Ukraine's graphite reserves represent 20% of global resources. The country also ranks among the top 10 globally for minerals, including bromine, magnesium, metal, manganese, peat, pig iron, and kaolin, among others. China has attained global dominance in critical minerals through strategic long-term investments, industrial policies, and advantages such as lower labor costs and more lenient regulations. This control extends to 85 to 90% of global rare earth elements, from mining to refining, and 92% of global manufacturing of rare earth element magnets. China supplies over half of the 30 critical raw materials identified by the European Commission and nearly 40% of the EU's needs. Australia and South Africa also play major roles, particularly in lithium, cobalt, and manganese. Canada and Brazil are crucial suppliers of nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements. Before 2022, Ukraine was a significant supplier of steel plates, titanium, lithium, gallium, iron ore, and manganese to Europe. However, the Russian invasion disrupted these supply routes, necessitating more expensive and slower rail alternatives. Russia, itself a major supplier of titanium, nickel, and platinum group metals, has also been affected by sanctions, exacerbating global shortages of essential materials such as titanium, crucial for aerospace and electronics industries. China's dominance in critical raw materials enables it to wield geopolitical influence in economic decisions. Over the past 15 years, it has halted exports to Japan, Sweden, and the United States. Rising protectionism further impacts global supply chains for critical raw materials, with some countries, including Zimbabwe and Chile, restricting lithium exports, and Indonesia and the Philippines tightening control over nickel exports. Due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, nickel and lithium, crucial for electric vehicles and renewable energy, have seen significant price hikes of 36% and 14.97%. Platinum group metals, essential for catalytic converters and pivotal in the hydrogen economy, are anticipated to play a substantial role in hydrogen production and fuel cells. The world is on the brink of a sustainability-driven era. Goldman Sachs forecasts that by 2030, 72% of new vehicle sales in the EU and 50% in the US will be electric vehicles. This transition will markedly boost demand for critical raw materials such as lithium and cobalt, vital for battery and electric engine production. By 2030, EU demand for lithium could surge up to 21 times its 2020 levels, while the region's import reliance on critical raw materials remains high due to limited domestic mining capacity. So I know that was kind of long and a bit dry, but I think it's really important that the World Economic Forum puts this out, because they really do people a great favor in like not having to come up with their own conspiracy theories about how all these interests converge around war. You're seeing how many industries have stakes in these raw materials that are apparently exist in abundance in Ukraine, and we're competing for access to these materials with the bad countries, Russia and China, which no doubt adds to the reasons why we are so hell-bent on continuing this war. You see how it's not just defense contractors, it's green energy, renewable vehicle energy, aerospace, IT, chips, marine technology. All of those interests converge around the need to basically sacrifice a generation of Ukrainians and tens and tens of thousands of Russians as well, to keep this war going. There it is in writing on their blog, on their website. Not really hiding it. This is why I say, like, people who have these people who talk about what's really going on, there it is. It's right there. They put it on the blog. It's on the website. You can read it.
Sure.
Like, they're not afraid. They're not ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Whenever
they start saying we need to defend democracy, we're very concerned about human rights violations, put your hand on your wallet.
Right.
All right. It's never about that. It's never about that. I got two words for you: Saudi and Arabia. Okay. We don't give a shit about human rights. We don't give a shit about democracy. We are perfectly willing and always have been to ally with autocratic regimes with terrible human rites records, sell weapons in some cases, right? When Hillary was at the State Department, if you wrote a big check to the Clinton Foundation, you got weapons. We never care about that. It's never about that. There's always an economic motive behind it in one way or another. There's always corporate interests wealthy interests behind any military action we take. Any rhetoric about democracy and human rights, it's always a smokescreen. Look at Israel. Look at Israel. They're fucking committing a genocide, and we keep arming it. We could care less. Because strategically, what did RFK say? It's our aircraft carrier in the Middle East. So that's it. We could care less. Now, a running theme, I think for Sunday, I'm going to work up something about Doge. And, Malay. So I've done some preliminary research into what's happened in Argentina. And, what he has done has been very good for bond traders, been very good for stock people in the markets there in Argentina. Poverty has exploded. That's what they want for us. That's what they want for us. All of the stuff, all of the reform they're talking about enacting, it's to benefit the plutocrats. These are plutocrats. Elon's a plutocrat. Donald Trump is a plutocrat. These people, Vivek is a plutocrat. Sure, might their policies put more money in their pockets? Yeah, it might. It's going to fuck you. They don't care about that. They never did. And every now and then, this is what we were talking about on RBN. Every now and then, these guys come out and say it. They forget. They say the soft part out loud, because I think it's hard to always shift gears like that. If you're always in a back room saying, yeah, now we're gonna make the money. It's very hard to always remember when the cameras are on to go, oh, these poor Ukrainian people. So he just, he said what they say among themselves. It happens every now and then. Every once in a while, Wolf Blitzer went on the air, talked about how we had to continue to have war because it's a jobs program.
Yeah.
Why would he say something like that? Because that's what they say when the cameras are off. Once in a while, they forget to play the democracy shtick for the rubes.
Yeah, and I mean, in this case, Lindsey Graham, this interview was on Fox News, whose audience is a lot more skeptical of that narrative than a lot of more liberal TV audiences would be. But even on the liberal networks, Morning Joe, it's good for U.S. businesses. Even on CNN, they say, well, this is good for manufacturing. And we played that clip a while back. I forget exactly when. When it comes to Ukraine, there so clearly is no, there's no national interest for us there, at least as it pertains to like the ordinary person, right? I mean, it's just so, it has become so impossible to convince the ordinary person, especially in these dire times at home, where you have people struggling to keep the lights on, credit card debt out of control, housing totally unaffordable for increasing numbers of people, the cost of groceries, the cost of living going up and up and up. To have billions of dollars going out the door to Ukraine is just such a slap in the face to the average person that I don't think those conceptual arguments really translate as much as they have in the past when it came to like the Iraq War, where it was, 2 years after an attack on our homeland, which they, of course, tried to make it look. They didn't come out and say it outright, but by the time that war started, half of the American people thought Iraq had actually knocked down the Twin Towers, right? So they were able to cloak these interests in other language, in other causes. That's very difficult to do in this example, and it's become increasingly difficult as this war has grinded on with no end in sight and nothing to really catch the eye of the average person except for the threat of nuclear war. For what? For the territorial integrity of eastern Ukraine? And it's just a dog that won't hunt. So they kind of, while they're fishing for other justifications, it's, hey, it's jobs here. Hey, we'll pay you to make the weapons, right? Well, hey, they have minerals that we need for our shit, for our businesses, right?
And this is why I've traveled around the country quite a lot over the last couple of years. It's the same everywhere you go. When you're in a kind of upscale neighborhood, you see the Ukraine flags. As soon as you leave those neighborhoods, you don't see that shit. Normal people don't fly no fucking Ukraine flag. That's a politics you have to be rich to be able to afford.
Yes, 100%. May Jest, thanks for the $20 over on Rumble. Don't be impressed. Everyone knows how to pronounce Seychelles. It is a popular vacation location.
That's why they know. That makes sense. That makes sense. That there's some pop culture tie-in that taught everyone how to say that. Because I know my Americans, man, they wouldn't know how to fucking say that.
But are you implying our audience watches Real Housewives reality show?
Apparently, you have not looked at the YouTube demographic breakdown.
Yeah, right.
In our back end. Yes, the Venn diagram is like
big overlap. All right,
big overlap.
We'll have to schedule our streams around their shows now. We have to make sure we're not overlapping. Thank you, May Jess. Appreciate that. Jeffrey Sachs noted that as of May of 2023, the New York Times in articles and opinion pieces had used the phrase Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. Hadn't or had? Or no, yeah, they had been using. Yeah, they have used that over and over again. Yes, they had been using it. Yes, thank you, John M. Appreciate that very much. All right, let's go to some super chats over here. Baytod Edermod, thanks for the $5. Israel has a long history of turning on their most beloved prime ministers, many who made their bones as terrorists before 1948. No peace for land. Anthony Ringett, thanks for the $10. Remember Al Franken's story about seeing Lindsey Graham in the bathroom? Al said if he were a Republican, he would vote for him. Graham said that was the problem as his shoulders slumped into the John. There you go. RBGH fam, thanks for the $5. Minerals is shiny after you brush the red off of them, as Lindsey Graham smiles. Yes. Mo Mooney, I like that one. Thanks for the $5. Russia came for the people but stayed for the minerals. Peter Monahan, thank you. Peter Monahan gave us $100 from Gator Pete. Let's get a cowbell for Peter. Thank you. That's very kind of you, Peter. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you, man.
Peter says, love Pros and Cons, love Pink Floyd, love David Gilmour, toured with Roger and David. I never had a chance to tour with Floyd. I love to hear your music opinions. By the way, who picks your intro music, and do you run the credits, especially the timed music, before you come live? Do I run the credits? The ones that are on the YouTube library are automatically uploaded into the description. And then we have a membership to Epidemic Sound. But, you're right. I should just put the artist and track list for each of the countdowns. So I pick the intro music, and Russ does the video intermissions for Sunday. But, yeah, I do the countdowns. But, yeah, no, we love to talk music. And, that's pretty cool. So you've toured with Roger Waters and David Gilmour individually, but never with the band.
Well, yeah, I mean, he would have to have done that in like 19.
When he was very young, yeah.
They fucking hate each other. They've hated each other for a very long time.
Been pretty long, yes.
Yeah.
That would have been a while back. Okay. Let's.
I can't remember. Did they reunite for Live Aid? Didn't they do a set for Live Aid?
I think they did something.
They did, right?
Together. I forget what it was, but I think they did something together, but it didn't take.
No, that was it. They did that one thing. I think it might have been Live Aid.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, we will move on here. Okay, so shortly after the election and Donald Trump's victory, Elon Musk tweeted out the following here with the Captain Phillips meme. Look at me, we are the mainstream media. Now, Elon tweets out, you, meaning you, the ex-users, are the media now. And this did not sit well with Axios' Jim Vandehei. He made an appearance at some press event. I forget exactly what it was, but we will find out shortly because we have the video. Not only did he go on a rant against Elon and alternative media at this event, but Morning Joe brought him on to congratulate him and congratulate themselves on the importance of what they do. So
it's what they're best at.
That's what they're best at. So here's this segment here.
He's here, right? Yeah.
He's there.
Last week, you were awarded the 2024 Fourth Estate Award by the National Press Club, along with Axios' the great Mike Allen. So congratulations.
That's classic.
The award recognizes journalists who have made significant contributions to the industry, and you have. Specifically, you and Mikey were awarded for your work that has revolutionized how audiences consume news. And we have some of the remarks you made during your acceptance speech. Let's listen.
I hate this damn debate about, like, oh, we don't need the media. Like, it is not true. Think about what makes this. I love this country. I'm a beneficiary of this country. Like some from Wisconsin who can come and start 2 companies, be up here, win an award, sit next to Mikey. I'm a beneficiary of it. But there's something about the country. There's something about it, right? There's something about freedom, capitalism, the animal spirits of democracy. But at the core of that is maybe transparency, maybe a free press, maybe the ability to do your job without worrying to go to jail, maybe the ability to sit in a war zone and tell people what's actually happening so they're not just looking at distortion matters. It matters profoundly. It's why it's not like we just love getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning doing this every single day. Like, we do it because we love it. We do it because it matters. The work that we do matters. Everything we do is under fire. Elon Musk sits on Twitter every day, or X today, saying, like, we are the media. You are the media. My message to Elon Musk is bullshit. You're not the media. You having a blue check mark, a Twitter handle, and 300 words of cleverness doesn't make you a reporter any more than me looking at your head and seeing that you have a brain and telling you have an awesome set of tools makes me a damn neurosurgeon, right? Like, what we do, what journalists do, what you did in Mississippi, what Al Jazeera does in the Middle East. You don't proclaim yourself to be a reporter. Like, that's nonsense. Like, being a reporter is hard, really hard. You have to care. You have to do the hard work. You have to get up every single day and say, I want to get to the closest approximation of the truth without any fear, without any favoritism. You don't do that by popping off on Twitter. You don't do that by having an opinion. You do it by doing the hard work.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. We just got to play this brief.
Come on, slow clap, everybody. First of all, I've got to say.
All right, before we get into his self-righteous sort of.
Put my foot in the crack ass.
Oh, God.
Oh, you didn't do the thing.
Yeah.
You didn't
So
do the thing.
The kill the loop, yeah. So before we get into the sort of self-righteous, part 2 of this from the rest of the Morning Joe panel, it's mostly Joe. He's a real Mike hog.
Yeah.
Though, isn't the whole point of journalism that anyone can do it? Like, anyone can do it. Like, yes, anyone can be a reporter. That the whole one of the things that made that has historically made American journalism great is that there was not a lot of gatekeeping. That's the extra read about, you tell a story and you write the story. Like, you could do it. Journalists came from working class backgrounds. Now, they had to get hired by a paper, sure, but not every paper is the New York Times. Not every paper is the Washington Post. You could submit pieces to your local newspaper. Like, the whole point of it, what makes it a noble profession is that anybody can do it. Now, it's hard to do it well. I'm not saying anybody should be taken seriously as a journalist and that everybody has to be revered as a reporter. But when you see the optics of that, this guy getting up at the press club with the white tablecloth, I mean, this is what, Matt Taibbi has written a lot about, the sort of how the class composition of journalism has morphed into this very elitist sort of inner circle, and has really left the blue-collar sort of nature of the work itself, which is, scrappy, argumentative guy, hits the ground, asks the tough questions, pesters people, bothers people, gets stories out of people, like the Matt Lee type. Like, that's why he's so fun to watch, because he's this sort of relic of the past. Right. Now, what passes for journalism is these jerk-offs who are so offended at the idea that basically anyone can get their message out there. There are people on Twitter who I don't like, whose opinions I don't like, whose work I don't enjoy. That Jack Posobiec guy, the big Trump guy. But that guy is good at what he does. Like, if you dig his shit, He's good at it. He interviews people, sometimes in studio, sometimes on the street. He'll go to Trump rallies and events and post stuff. I mean, that's journalism. That's reporting. And he's good at it, and he has a following because of it. He's got almost 3 million followers. Not my cup of tea, but, like, it's good that people have an opportunity to grow an organic following like that. It doesn't have to be gatekept in the way that he suggests it has to be. And that's what really is offensive to them, is this idea that now, because of social media, anyone can do it. Now, is there a dark side of that? Is there a downside to that? Yeah, it's that some people who aren't very good at it are going to, cultivate a following even though they do trash work. But that's generally not true. I mean, generally you have to trust the wisdom of crowds. You generally have to trust the masses. You have to trust the population, which is really at the core of what democracy is, I thought, is trust in the people, which they have no trust in the people. And so that's kind of what I think he gets at in that rant/meltdown there.
Yeah, well, this is true across society in media and culture. You look at why Hollywood is on fire. It is partly because out-of-touch elites wound up taking over the creative departments, whereas in the past, I'm not saying everybody came from the rough side of town, but Spielberg, Lucas, they were like from middle-class, normal homes, which gave them a sense of what people liked, of what people were interested in seeing. They were connected to the public in that way. Once you give it over to a bunch of Ivy League graduates, well, now they see their role as to impose their view on people. Same thing happened with reporting. When you had working class to middle class backgrounds in reporters, they saw their job as sharing information with people because they saw themselves as one of them.
Right.
Once you give it over to these elites, they see their job as, and they say it straight out. Mika said this. They think it's their job to tell people what to think. That's our job.
Right.
That's our job. That's how they think. That's how they think of journalism, because they see themselves as to the manner born, and we are going to bring the proper information to the peasants. Now, what he misses through all of this is that their own point of view is distorted by their class.
Right.
They are not presenting honest, objective, unbiased journalism. They are presenting a very classist take, particularly on economics and foreign policy. And their real exception is not disinformation or misinformation. It's a challenge to their narrative. That is their real issue. And when you look at some of the reporting that's been done, you want to talk about people that I don't necessarily like. Look, Matt Walsh, it took Matt Walsh, and this, he didn't have to dig into any archives. He just went and looked at what they had put out publicly. He is the one who revealed the doctors at the Children's Gender Clinic in Nashville bragging about how much money there is to be made in these surgeries. Would they ever in a million years have done that story in the corporate media? Well, why not? I mean, fine. You support those kinds of treatments. Fine. Isn't that news? Isn't that worth?
Right.
And it's not even your job to support or not support.
Right.
You're pretending that you have those standards, but you don't. You don't. That at the height of that debate, wasn't that news? But it took a Matt Walsh to reveal it. This is what they take exception to. They have lost their ability to gatekeep.
Right.
Now, a lot of people said, and I agree, if Harris had won, this liberal tendency towards that kind of authoritarianism would have gotten worse. We do see the counterpart on the other side, where Trump's new AG pick, Bondi, is talking about sending the FBI to question pro-Palestine protesters. Might that have happened under Harris? Perhaps. It's a little less likely. I mean, Trump's just telling you straight out what he's going to do, and he wants to arrest people for burning flags and that kind of thing. As you've often pointed out, the libs feel a need to put a good face on it. Right. They feel a need to pretend they care about civil liberties, which checks some of those things. You know, they feel like they have to do it in a sneaky way, like the Twitter files, right?
Right.
They can come right out and tell you. They'll try to find their ways. But it really is a Scylla and Charybdis choice. Like, I don't want to give the impression, oh, Trump is here, free speech is back. But when you look at the point of view in that clip, that is the point of view that tends to be amongst the libs. It is that it is for us to tell you what to think. Not just what to know, what to think.
Right. And so now Scarborough adds to this. He adds to this, and he goes off on a rant of his own.
Extraordinary content. It needs to be said.
Yeah.
It continues to need to be said. When all of the garbage is flying around on social media, lying about reporters, lying about the hard work they do, lying about the hard work editors do, lying about everything up and down.
What he means by lying about this, lying about that, lying about this is challenging every narrative, right? That's what
right.
they are competing now against what's actually popular.
Right.
Which they didn't have to do before the
Right.
age of social media because people had limited options. Well, I mean, you gotta either read the Post or the News or the Times. It's one of those three. If you're in New York City.
You notice none of them are talking about. You really want to get into what's wrong with the media. None of them are talking about Clinton's deregulation of the media space, which has allowed this concentration of 90% of the media among 6 corporations. That's not a problem. You'll never hear about that on any of these shows. I've never heard them talk about that. I have never once on one of these shows heard them talk about the concentration of news among 6 corporations.
Yeah, no, me neither.
About not only their alternative set of facts, but alternative set of facts about what people like you do. And I love how you connected reporters in Mississippi in the 1960s to reporters fighting for their life to get the story out in the Middle East today.
That was a long time
Jim,
ago,
it was
Joe.
very powerful.
Really good.
Very powerful. Even if even if we had to beep you more than
the story in the Middle East today. So he's referring to journalists in war zones. I'm assuming he's referring to Gaza. What impact has that made? And have not Joe and Mika done their part to undermine on the ground reporting in Gaza? Because they have certainly played a huge role in the smearing of pro-Palestine protesters who have the position they do, not just because of a certain conviction, but a lot of people who did not pay particularly close focus to this issue in the past have been radicalized by the on-the-ground reporting, which doesn't seem to have affected the hearts and minds at MSNBC all that much. Like I said, we're still waiting for that video of Rachel Maddow crying about dead children in Gaza.
We'll be
she had
waiting
a lot
a long
of tears
time.
to shed about the migrants that Trump put in camps, but none about this genocide now. So it's kind of interesting that they would give him such credit for recognizing the work of war reporters in the Middle East, while at the same time parroting the exact line that we have a key ally here who we have to help commit this mass murder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
we would if we ran a Dave Chappelle concert.
I
it was
like
still
it,
good.
Jim's mild mannered.
He preached it, though. The cadence, I mean, I might get him ordained.
Well, let me just say, why this is so important right now, more than ever, is because critics of the press are feeling more empowered than ever, to lie more than ever. I've had friends for years going, I'm so overwhelmed, Joe, by the news. I don't read the news. I go, where do you get your news then? Epic Times. I go,
oh God.
You get your news from a website run by Chinese, by conspiracy theorists in a Chinese religious cult. That's
okay. So Epoch Times. There's definitely a lot of bullshit in there. I don't think it's any worse than what you would see in the Post. It probably has about the same truth to bullshit ratio as Morning Joe does.
Yeah,
probably a little better. Probably a little better. So this is the part of this story they don't get. They cannot hold themselves accountable. Very much like the Israeli state. They cannot investigate themselves. It doesn't matter how many times they fail. It doesn't matter how much the numbers on public approval of the media plummet. A year after year, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. They're losing their own lib audience. Because after a while, people get tired of losing. They get tired of getting gassed up about how Hillary's going to win, about how Harris is going to win. Even the libs have a limit. Even they have a limit on how many times you can gas them up and then come up with excuses and blame the racists. In the end, people don't like to be isolated and powerless. And it seems like for a lot of the liberals, the rank and file people who watch this shit, they don't want to be on the wrong side of the cultural drift. I think that's a big part of why they've tuned out. The ratings are plummeting. Yep. And I don't think it's just a normal your side lost. I don't think they're gaining that back. I would be very, very surprised. And I think the smarter of them, or the less ideologically committed of them, are getting ready to reset. They're getting ready to reset. They don't want to be the person who gets laughed at. They don't want to be the odd person out. These are people who are very concerned about social status, people who watch shows like this. And as they see the culture drifting into this kind of anti-woke manosphere thing, you watch. A lot of those people are just going to adopt those manners and those attitudes. It won't happen overnight, but it will, just like it did in the Reagan years. And then all of a sudden, this is why I was saying, this woke thing, they're going to be laughing at it in a few years, just the same way the hippie was a joke in every cultural product by the mid-'80s. If you showed a hippie, it was a joke. It was a figure of fun. It was, oh, look at this idiot. That's what woke people are going to be. They're going to have somebody talking about DEI on a sitcom within the next 4 years, and everyone's going to go, ha, 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 ha. Right? Nobody wants to be that person. So they're all going to shift away from it. And shows like this that have built their entire brand around the assumption of these ideas as correct and right and virtuous, they don't know whether shit or wine their wristwatch now. They have no idea where to go. That's why they did that Mar-a-Lago thing, right? They're trying to retool, but it's too late. What audience you have left is there for that kind of shit. You can't just switch gears on them. They don't know what to do, and I don't think they're going to be able to work it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the case of Joe and Mika, I think it's more a case of just having built an entire brand around the strategy of otherizing Donald Trump. I mean, Joe Scarborough is he's a conservative, not just that. Right? No, of course. I'm saying I think that plays more into it in their particular case than like some of the more liberal anchors on the network, like Maddow and Joy Reid and Hayes and things like that. But the whole project of MSNBC was to otherize Trump, to disqualify Trump. Has been a 10-year project that has failed absolutely miserably, which is really why I think they were talking in such existential terms about this election. I don't think Trump was an existential threat to America. I think he was an existential threat to MSNBC. If we don't beat him, if we go all in on this strategy, which we have to now, because don't forget, audience capture exists in the mainstream media too, right? We have attracted this basically Lincoln Project Republican audience. It's really not even a liberal network. I mean, Maddow's a liberal, Hayes is a liberal, Reid is a liberal, but most of the daytime coverage is fucking Republicans. It's Nicole Wallace. It's Joe Scarborough, right? Like, if you go all in on that,
I mean, that's pretty much what Chris Matthews was. Like, it's
and that's basically, yeah.
Fucking get teary-eyed one more time about Reagan having drinks with Tip O'Neill.
Yeah, Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. Yeah, exactly.
we need to hear this fucking story again.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So when you go all in on that and it fails, yeah, you are stuck looking pretty bad. And I think this session was really the cope session after the Mar-a-Lago meeting. They went on the air after that and talked about how, you know, their friends we're getting phone calls saying it was a great idea, and people on Twitter are being mean to us. That was a level of cope, but this is really this really distills what the fear of Trump was about to them. It was a fear of surrendering control of the narrative, and not just surrendering control of the narrative, since that had been kind of slipping for a while, but it shattered whatever illusion of superiority they had. It really
what they had
really,
left.
It shattered
of
whatever
their ability to dictate terms to the peasants.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. It shone a bright light on the fact that they actually don't pull more weight than jerk offs
the
on
media,
social media.
the celebrities, Taylor Swift. None of it mattered.
Right.
They were saying Twitter's not real life. Well, your whole media, celebrity, Hollywood, Washington clusterfuck apparently is not real life.
Exactly.
It turns out that this was the moment where those scales shifted. And it became, no, actually, that is real life. And that's what I'm saying. They're panicking. They have no idea what they're going to do in a world where they don't have power and influence. MSNBC is not long for this world, because I don't think they're going to recover their viewership. So at that, they're spinning it off. They're talking about changing the name. Yeah, I think it could wind up being reduced to its parts, and a lot of these people could get fired. I think a good measure for whether you are capable of assessing politics in America, do you watch Joe and Mika, and do you feel like they're your friends, or do you feel like they should be put on trial for their crimes against the people? If it's the former, you should shut the fuck up about politics. Like, if those two people don't make your head explode, you have no idea what you're talking about politically.
Yeah, I think that is a good test of it. For sure. Brad Gilbert, thanks for the $2. NATO versus Russia is just Hogan versus Savage storyline. Thank you, Brad Gilbert. Random, thanks for the $22.99 super sticker. Appreciate that. Mark DeChiara, thanks for the $4.99. I like the sound of these truthful, hardworking reporters Vanda High speaks of. Where can I find them in the corporate media? Yes, there you go. Peter Monahan, thanks for the $20, Peter. Happy American Genocide Day. In the 80s, I was in the Army and underwater welding. Gobble, gobble, my arse. They woke Biden up, dressed him, and as the world prepares for war, he feels it's important to pardon a damn turkey. That's right.
He was on Staten Island last night.
Oh, really?
He went and had like a Thanksgiving dinner at the military base out there.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Wow, I did not know that. Hey, Michael Castillo is here for $50. You know what that means?
As for me against you, who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
It's a good sound drop. Good choice, Michael.
Good choice.
Thanks for the $50, too. It was very kind of you. Al Sharpton was an FBI informant snitch. Thank you, Michael Castillo. Appreciate that.
He was also he was the granddaddy of the race hustlers, that guy.
Yes. All right, let's keep going here. We got some more Rumble rants here. Kenman G. Zionists often use other conflicts to distract them from Israel's crimes against Palestine. I remember the Yazidis during the assault in Gaza in 2009. Also Darfur. Hollywood couldn't shut up. Yes, that's true. They did make a lot of noise about that. Furrows Queen says, Russ, would you turn your mic down, please? My cat can't sleep because of the volume. Just kidding. She's so used to you both. In fact, she thinks you both live with us now. Well, that's sweet. Thank you. And hello to your cats.
I miss having a cat. I go out of town too much.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now that you go out of town, it's harder to have.
Yeah, I can't have a pet. It would just be a nightmare.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. All right, folks. So we're going to hear from one other of our dissident sponsors here. From the author who gave you the Renegade Nuns on Wheels MC comes the contemporary Shakespearean tragedy, Love and Potato Salad, Romance and Food Allergy in the Iowa City Park. The story of a kind, beautiful woman, the poor fool in love with her, and a food allergy so epic in scale, the officially prestigious UNESCO City of Literature will never be the same in this raunchy dissertation on the mix of horror and mediocrity that is life in modern-day North America and the absurdity of unrequited love. Love and Potato Salad is the name of the book. It's by Jason Thomas Smith, and it's available now in print and Kindle editions, so buy it before it destroys you. You can go to this link, dodissidents.com/lovepotato, to support our dissident arts community here. He has had some people from this show buy the book and enjoy the book, so that's great. We're glad to hear that, Jason. And go support Jason if you'd like some nice easy, funny holiday reading. DoDissidents.com/love potato. All righty. Okay, we will move right on along here. Okay, so here's a fun story, folks. The Libertarians, what do I say about Libertarians? They're funny when they're mad, right? Yeah. That's what I always said about Libertarians.
They're cute.
They're cute. So, Libertarian Dave Smith has been going back and forth with some people on Twitter, went back and forth with us briefly about a different matter from this. Yes. But he's been going back and forth with our friend Nick at RBN, and most of his sparring partners have been members of the Libertarian Party who, now that Donald Trump has staffed his cabinet with mostly neocon swamp monsters and notably not one libertarian, despite Trump's promise to pick a libertarian for the cabinet, a lot of libertarians are saying, hey, you're really screwed up here by throwing in your lot with Donald Trump. And so he decided to invite some of them to call in to a Spaces event where they can give him a piece of their mind. Now, I will say one of the things that's funny, and we don't have this as part of the video, but the Libertarian Party chair, Angela McArdle, is saying that, no, actually, RFK is a libertarian and that he satisfied his promise because when RFK tried to get the nomination, he registered with the party. So they're trying to pass that off as a libertarian nominee. Yeah.
Nice try.
That's a nice try. Nice try. First of all, RFK, like, there's a lot of stuff I would like RFK to do were he to be confirmed. None of it is libertarian. It's actually all pretty anti-libertarian. It's regulation.
He wants more regulation on food and drugs.
Yeah, exactly. So
isn't that the opposite of libertarianism?
Yes.
Aren't you guys all, you want to fucking try to cure cancer by smacking someone with a chipmunk? That's up to you.
That's
isn't that your whole thing?
I'm sure they would agree that is their plan.
Stick a gerbil up your ass to eat the tumor.
Exactly. So anyway, we don't get into that here. What we get into here is Chase Oliver, who was the Libertarian nominee, who was really kind of thrown under the bus by party leadership, calls in and has a back and forth with Dave. Now, one of the things that Chase references in the early part of the conversation before we cut in with the audio here, I just want to kind of, be as concise as possible for timing purposes. Chase Oliver screenshotted this Donald Trump Truth Social post from November 17th of this year, so just a little over a week ago. So Trump says, we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of COVID. Yeah, what a celebratory occasion that is. And if you recall, under President Trump's leadership, we had incredible public health policies. President Trump's unparalleled creation of Operation Warp Speed was one like we've never seen before. Dr. Jeanette Neshawat from Fox News. He was watching TV. He saw someone say a good thing about him, and he decided he would tweet that out and celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the pandemic and tout his incredible public health policies, quote unquote. So Chase Oliver quote tweets this and says, imagine that. The creator of the COVID state is still bragging about it 5 years later. I won't be celebrating this anniversary, unlike Trump and his sycophants who think he did everything right in 2020. Okay, so that is what Dave references at the beginning of this audio when we're coming in here. And then Dave Smith takes issue with the fact that Chase Oliver chose to wear a mask at Thanksgiving 4 years ago and cites that as a reason why so many in the party at the rank and file level simply could not support him. So we're going to listen to this audio.
Look, man, you bring up that these guys were celebrating COVID and all of the crazy tyrannical measures as like a reason why they shouldn't be in government. But at the same time, man, such a huge part of the reason why you couldn't pull libertarian support was because you were right there with them. And you may not have ever advocated government force, but you were right there bragging about masking up by Thanksgiving of 2020. And so
let me speak to both of those things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so let me speak to that. So first and foremost, you know me, I've never advocated government mandate anything. I think that's ridiculous. And so I have not been celebrating lockdowns and mandates the way Trump has been, saying Operation Warp Speed and his government did a great job in 2020. I was very much opposed to that. Now, as for the wearing a mask on Thanksgiving, I was responding to a tweet of somebody who said literally small gatherings at holidays are going to kill all of us. It's the worst thing that anybody could ever do. And I was saying, listen, I'm gonna meet with my family on Thanksgiving. I'm not canceling the holidays to see my people. Now, one way or the other, like, this has been taken wildly out of context, considering many of the people that Trump himself and the people he had in government and the people he was backing were far more supportive of Operation Warp Speed, of the vaccine, of the mandates, of the lockdowns than I ever was. I traveled across the country to speak to people. I spoke to business people who lost their businesses to COVID, for Christ's sake. Like, I spoke to people who had to say goodbye to their family members through plate glass or through plastic in nursing homes because of this. Like, I am keenly aware of exactly how fucked up the government was during the COVID era. And that's one of the things that's really, upset me about this whole race, is that for an entire segment of the party, they got this false impression. And really, I felt like nothing I could have said, nothing I could have done during the campaign would have changed those minds, and all it would have done is taken time away from me to speak libertarian messaging outward to people who hadn't heard the libertarian message yet. And that is really why I didn't want to have those fights. And I'm not going to have those fights because I've never supported mandates or lockdowns. Now, you can point to a tweet or two, and I can, I had done this with several state executive committees and others, had to go tweet by tweet through a lot of things. But what I think is ultimately the idea here is we're going to have to see exactly what Trump does over the next 4 years. If we look to his record, I don't think a lot of libertarian things happen. The COVID state started under him. We expanded drone bombing under him. We didn't end any wars. I know we didn't start any new land wars, but we didn't end any either. And now we have a guy who really, really wants to go to war with China and Marco Rubio. And I'm worried about this kind of stuff. And I'm an optimist. I think that ultimately the world will end up better than it is today. And that has nothing to do with government. But besides that point, I can point to the fact that it's a little hypocritical that so many people who cheerleaded voting for Donald Trump, knowing that he is the guy who instituted Operation Warp Speed. He's the guy who took away vaccine liability from people under his government. He's the person who, was okay with locking down states across the country. And for me to just say I wore a mask at Thanksgiving to be in any way equitable to those kinds of crimes that Donald Trump perpetrated against the nation.
Chase, but this is the thing, man. And I'm sorry, I'm going to bring Angela in here in a second because I know you've been waiting. But the thing is that this is just a straw man. Nobody's making the calculation of, was Donald Trump as president of the United States a failure on COVID versus your position on COVID. The point is that there's a completely different standard and a different bar for somebody to be the Libertarian Party presidential candidate and unite libertarians behind their message. When you have no conceivable chance of actually winning, there's just a different standard for why you run a third party race. And so the question isn't, listen, the thing is like this. Okay, this is almost how I'll say it. It's like you're not the stuff that you were posting, which I understand you kind of don't want to focus on, but it's not that. It's just that it seems that when it really matters, you kind of fell for the propaganda. And part of falling for the propaganda is also just kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's being a little bit worried that you're going to get a lot of people in your social circles angry at you if you were to stand up to that. There's a lot of things when you just kind of, listen, in the year of sweeping totalitarianism.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. One, you just made an argument against voting for third-party candidates in general.
Right.
The argument that someone who can really win is held to a lesser standard than somebody who's running third party, because what's the point of backing them if they're not going to win? Well, you could say that about basically any third party candidate.
Right.
So why even? And this is, if you look at these libertarians who, welcome pro-life people into their fold. Okay, so you just want to be Republicans, but that doesn't code as cool and edgy. This is not new for there to be a libertarian oriented faction in the Republican Party. In fact, post Barry Goldwater, that faction built an influence. And you could argue that's kind of the mainstream economic theory of the Republican Party ever since Reagan, right? Cut regulations, cut taxes, cut government departments. So why don't you just say you're a Republican?
Well, on that score, yes. I mean, what is the point
of this whole kabuki?
Well, of course. What the Mises Caucus is serving as now is not a member of the Libertarian Party, but a PAC. They're basically a libertarian-oriented MAGA PAC. That's basically what they're saying. Right. But I have to get to this part because I was funny.
But hang on. Also, Dave talking about not wanting to get blowback. This is a man who went on Piers Morgan and defended Daryl Cooper comparing the Nazis favorably to drag queens. You're going to talk about audience capture?
Right.
You don't tell me that Dave Smith, a Jewish man, does not understand that a lot of his audience is listening to his pro-Palestine take because they are, in fact, anti-Semitic. And they like watching a Jew slamming what they perceive not as a Zionist state, but as a Jewish state. It confirms this was, I wish I knew the name of the rabbi who said it. He said, Zionists want to conflate Zionism with Judaism to justify Zionism, and anti-Semites want to conflate Zionism with Judaism to justify their anti-Semitism. That is a huge portion of his audience, and he knows it. And he knows it. And that is why he would not distance himself from Daryl Cooper when that shit blew up. He knew what he's doing. He's sitting there. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a little extreme. Get the fuck out of here, man. If you're going to dance like a fucking monkey like that, if you're going to dance for that audience because you're afraid they're going to turn on you, you have absolutely no right to be sitting there and talking about anybody else being worried about a reaction from a portion of their audience.
Well, it's not even talking about his audience. It's talking about social circles. And apparently this cost him the support of his party. The fact that he not got the policy wrong, but that he wore a mask on Thanksgiving. This is what's also amazing about this. This is what's amazing about this, and this is what's very woke about this. It's very woke of Dave and these libertarians who could not stomach support for Chase Oliver because he wore a mask 4 years ago at Thanksgiving.
Guy, people keep saying to me he's smart. I have not seen. I admit I don't find him interesting. I haven't absorbed a lot of his content. From what I've seen, I mean, the guy's smart. If you mean he's a good grifter, he's built an audience by not crossing them or challenging them in any way. He tells them what they want to hear, as he's doing there. I mean, I guess he's smart in that sense. The idea that he's an honest actor making intelligent arguments, I've seen no evidence of that.
Well, what I want to get back to here is that he talks about how Chase Oliver is disqualified.
See, this is what happens when you have children right in the middle of your segment. The kids are just, these are libertarian kids. They heard from the other room that we're slamming libertarianism, we're slamming the whole Mises Caucus, and they said, you know what? We're the real libertarians. There are no rules here. There are no rules in this house. We are just going to blow up this segment. See, Keaton, man, your kids are the real libertarians, man. You're still muted.
Yeah, that's right. They are this is the real libertarian household here.
That's it.
But
that's
yeah,
it.
no,
they were like, fuck that segment.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you have Dave Smith saying basically at the beginning of this that Chase Oliver crossed a red line by wearing a mask on Thanksgiving 4 years ago and tweeting about it. And then Chase Oliver says, well, I was not for mandates. I was not for lockdowns. I talked to businesses who had been crushed by those mandates and by those lockdowns. And then Dave Smith says, yeah, but you still fell for the propaganda because you wore a mask on Thanksgiving, and adds to that with this.
And part of falling for the propaganda is also just kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's it's being a little bit worried that you're going to get like a lot of people in your social circles angry at you if you were to stand up to that. There's a lot of things when you just kind of, I mean, listen, in the year of like sweeping totalitarianism based on pure pseudoscience, where every good libertarian that I know saw through it like so quickly.
Sweeping totalitarianism at the hands of who? Sweeping totalitarianism under who? This was November of 2020 you're talking about. You're talking about Donald Trump, who could have at any time during that year taken Fauci aside and say, listen, what we're doing here is clearly not working. We're tearing the country apart. We're driving people crazy.
He could have fired him.
Right. We have kids walking around with masks on their face, not being able to go to school. And on top of all this, our COVID numbers suck. We still have more deaths than any other country. So, like, nothing we're doing is working here. You got to make a change. And if you don't make a change, I have to find somebody who can. He could have said that at any time. He didn't. Why? Because Donald Trump didn't give a fuck. Donald Trump is a lazy bastard who didn't want to deal with this at all, who wanted to show no leadership whatsoever. And so he let the COVID regime run wild. Chase Oliver was against that at the time, but because he doesn't code right. This is what's annoying to me about this. This is what kind of sticks in my craw about this, but we will let this finish.
And was just railing against the whole thing. It's like to even like have these series of tweets up. It really does just come off like, oh, you missed the boat on this. Now, obviously, Donald Trump did a lot of bad things, but at the same time,
you missed the boat on this. You missed the boat on this, even though you had the policy correct. Donald Trump, yeah, he did a lot of bad things, like do the very totalitarianism that you accuse this guy of falling for, even though he didn't. Like, what the hell?
That's what I'm saying. These people are a bunch of clowns. So, like, I don't understand why anyone takes this faction seriously.
Yeah.
These are the same people who will say communism is unworkable, but, you know, Thunderdome, yeah, no, that's, you could totally run a modern society with no government, no regulations, no rules. That is much more practical than communism. And I myself, I can't speak for Keaton. He's pretty much a Marxist. You know, a lot of my material analysis overlaps with Marxism. But yeah, I think communism is unworkable as it is often conceived. It's more workable than what these guys believe.
Yeah.
It's just apples to oranges. No libertarian I know, no libertarian who voted for Donald Trump is sitting here and saying his first term was a huge success. He didn't do very unlibertarian things. Many of us, it took us a long time to even consider the possibility of voting for this guy because some of the things he did were so unforgivable. But it was just hard to deny that in this moment, in terms of a political strategy, this seemed like the one that made sense.
Well, that goes back to what Russell's saying. Then you really are not a third party. You're really just a political
You're
action
Republicans.
committee.
You're Republicans.
Right. And as for the other thing, apples to oranges, how is it apples to oranges? How is it not a fair comparison? You started out that exchange by saying, look, a lot of people in our party, rank and file Libertarian Party members, could not vote for you because of this tweet about masking up at Thanksgiving. So what you're saying is that
but
is
you
a
can
red
vote for
line.
Trump.
Right. You're saying that's a red
who did
line.
not fire Fauci.
Right.
Fauci is like Satan for people who are upset about COVID. He could have fired him at any time. Fauci's not the Treasury Secretary. His hands were not tied. He could have fired Fauci. He didn't.
But the point is, well, yes, that too, but also this is a red line for a lot of your voters, but Trump's, who oversaw those policies, did not cross a red line.
Right.
So what is that about then? So what is that about? First, let's just go into a little bit of detail. Let's see what the tweet in question actually was. So Jamie Dupree tweets out, CDC director says the biggest coronavirus threat right now is not big gatherings in public, but small family gatherings where people take off their masks and the virus spreads. So Chase Oliver tweets out in response to him, so I'm having a Thanksgiving of less than 10 people and we'll be masked inside. And when we eat, since masks have to come off, we have spacing happening. It's not impossible to be responsible. Limit the size, wear a mask when not eating, space yourself accordingly. Pardon me. So you can love that. You cannot love that. That's his tweet. Once again, not dictating what ought to be the law of the land or the rules for other people. Just saying, this guy was basically implying that you shouldn't have any gathering. He's saying we are going to have a small gathering, and we're going to do our best to mitigate the spread of the virus if it happens to make its way into the house on Thanksgiving. So here's Donald Trump. Here's him in March at the start of these lockdowns outlining what his administration's policy was.
My administration is recommending that all Americans, including the young and healthy, work to engage in schooling from home when possible, avoid gathering in groups of more than 10 people, avoid discretionary travel, and avoid eating and drinking at bars, restaurants, and public food courts. If everyone makes this change or these critical changes and sacrifices now, we will rally together as one nation.
All right. So you could say, well, that was March. That was right when everything started. So he wasn't talking that as late as November of that year, as late as Thanksgiving of that year, was he? Well, apparently he was. So here's a tweet. November 22nd, 2020, President Trump's White House told Governor DeSantis to close down businesses and impose a mask mandate. But Governor DeSantis belittled the Trump administration's official report and refused to implement their recommendations. So this was November of 2020. This reporting came out the following month. The 4 weekly White House Coronavirus Task Force reports released by Governor Ron DeSantis' office this week are filled with warnings and recommendations about Florida's COVID situation in early November. DeSantis, however, appears to have mostly ignored the calls to wear masks and avoid large gatherings outlined in the reports. He generally stopped talking in public at all. Highlighted paragraph in the next one. Florida must reestablish strong mitigation statewide with even further intensified mitigation in the counties with rising cases and hospitalizations, the November 8th report said. Mitigation efforts should continue to include wearing masks in public, physical distancing, hand hygiene, avoiding or eliminating the opportunities for maskless crowding in public, including bars, and eliminating all social gatherings beyond the immediate household. So that's the Trump White House leaning on the red state governors as late as November of that year, trying to get them to lock down more and to implement more mask mandates. So that was the Trump policy at the same time that Chase Oliver tweeted out that he wore a mask on Thanksgiving, the same exact time. And this is what I mean when I say that the policy doesn't matter as much to the Mises Caucus as the branding. Because you can't make an argument that Chase Oliver on policy was worse than Donald Trump. You just can't make that argument. I just showed it to you. In November of 2020, he's leaning on the red state governors to lock down more.
Right.
So what it comes down to is branding. And this is why I say it's very woke of the Mises Caucus to have torn down Chase Oliver in this way. Because to them, Trump represents the sort of homesteading alpha frontiersman that a lot of libertarians like to fancy themselves. And a gay man in a mask does not code the same way. In their minds, that code's weak. And they are offended by that. You might call them triggered by that. That's why I say it's very woke of them. Because Chase Oliver on the policy, you cannot say was worse than Trump. But in their minds, what they're saying is that Chase Oliver's personal life choices and way of presenting himself offends their sensibilities. And the insistence that other people craft their life choices in order to accommodate your own personal sensibilities and or neuroses, that is, by definition, woke. That is what the wokesters do. You have to wear a mask or else I'm not safe. Right. You have to use my pronouns or else I'm not safe. You can't speak on my campus. My campus is a safe space for my ideas. Get out of here with your dangerous ideas. It is the insistence that society owes it to you to accommodate your every sensibility. That is what Dave and the Mises Caucus were so triggered by when it came to Chase Oliver. He signaled weak. That's why they keep beating him up over these tweets. Yeah, you were against the use of government force to impose your will, but you signaled like a pussy. That's basically what they're calling him. They're calling him a pussy. And it's really kind of a shitty thing to do to keep attacking him over that, especially since he had the policy right compared to Donald Trump anyway. And they're basically saying you just didn't code right. You were off brand for the manosphere wing of the Libertarian Party. That's what's underneath all this. It's very, very obvious, and it's very, very woke. It's very, very woke. This is what I mean. All politics is woke right now. It's a battle for who has the claim to dictate morals and behavior to other people. Everybody tries to do it. Even the ones who say they're so against that, they try to do it themselves. That's the only basis on which you're giving Chase Oliver a hard time. The only is that he didn't present correctly.
Yeah, it's also branding and access. This is very much they define themselves as a political party, so it's a little different. But it's kind of like the Sunrise Movement and our revolution, identifying themselves as an outsider organization, but really they're just an appendage to the Democratic Party. Really, they've turned the Libertarian Party into an appendage of the Republican Party. And for people like Dave Smith, I've said this before, some people don't want to hear this. Everybody wants to believe in somebody. I've been backstage at these types of events, and I am telling you, I'm not saying these people don't believe necessarily what they're saying, but what is more important is monetizing what they're saying. Right. What is more important is getting you to click on them and donate to them and become patrons of their channel because of what they're saying. And where there are things that maybe they might say something that you don't like, they don't say them. They don't say them. They approach this, speaking about politics, as any influencer trying to build a brand.
Right.
That's how they look at it. It's a business. Anything that they're going to do that's going to make their numbers drop, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. So I'm not saying a guy like Dave Smith does not actually believe these things. What I'm telling you is that he knows better than a lot of things he does say, but he won't say those things. His bread is buttered, cozying up to MAGA. And whatever thoughts he might have that are going to make MAGA people say, God damn it, did you hear what Dave Smith said? I'm never listening to Dave Smith again. He's not going to say that shit. He's not going to say it. He's going to tell you whatever shit you want to hear because that's fucking money. And that's most of these people. Joe Rogan does it. As big as he is, Joe Rogan will avoid. You can see it in a lot of segments he does. You can see he steers away from that place where he's going to have a meltdown from his audience. For most of these people, yeah, it's not that they don't believe any of what they're saying or it's all fake. They avoid areas where they have opinions that their audience base is not going to like.
Yeah, you're
getting a very curated version of what they think.
Took the words exactly out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's a curated version of what they think. It's not fake, but it's selective.
It's not fake. It's very selective. And, you know, with the whole Libertarian Party now, yeah, man, it's a lot easier to be in power than out of power. It's a lot easier to have access than not access. And when you have a lot of these people are basically podcaster influencer types, well, what could be a better business opportunity than to be an appendage to a president who's particularly into podcasters and influencers, than to be connected to that? It's a lot better than being out in the cold with your principles, right? That's what this is about. Chase Oliver, there's no money to be made backing Chase Oliver. There's no access to be gained backing Chase Oliver. This way you get to pretend you're independent. It's a cool punk kind of brand, but you're actually just a Republican. You get all the benefits of being a Republican.
Yeah. And the one thing I do have to bring up here is this, because this just as a personal point was a red line for me this cycle. I think I could speak for Russ when I say this. Here's Chase Oliver accepting the nomination for his party, putting in his policy plank, an end to genocide.
Only national candidate. RFK won't, Joe Biden won't, Donald Trump won't, but I'm saying right now, end genocide, ceasefire now, and support peace around the world. No more proxy wars.
Okay, so at that point, like, doesn't that seem like a more timely an urgent concern than whether or not he wore a mask at Thanksgiving 4 years ago? Like, if you're really bringing that up 4 years later, that'd be one thing if he were advocating for mandates and lockdowns. As a libertarian, I understand you would be very offended by that. Hey, that's the complete opposite of the way we approach politics. But he wasn't. Again, you took offense at a personal choice, which is a very woke thing to do. You were very triggered by a personal choice that he made, and you decided that was your red line. 4 years later, isn't this the red line? We interviewed Angela McArdle. She talks about the pro-Israel people as the glass parking lot people. They know the urgency of this. Dave Smith has spoken out on this issue very, very well in the past. So isn't that a red line? You're really going to bring up that, hey, so many couldn't vote for you because of a tweet about a mask? Now, 4 years later?
It's an excuse.
Well, this is what it's an excuse.
They want it. They want the power that comes with being Republicans without admitting they're Republicans. I get it. God, I've said that when people tried to push us to go MAGA. You think I don't want to be part of a political party? I remember what it was like to feel like you had some influence in government. It was an illusion, but I believed it. I thought as a Democrat, I was part of an organization that actually had some kind of control over the government. I didn't realize my opinions were meaningless back then, but it's a good feeling. Yeah, I'm a Democrat. Oh, look, that's my president, right? I would love to believe that. I would love to. They were seduced by that. They gave into that. Wow, wearing a mask at Thanksgiving, that's more anti-libertarian than being pro-life? You're welcoming those people in.
How about being pro-genocide? Right. How about that? How about being pro-interrogating campus protesters who are pro-Palestine, which Donald Trump's attorney general just said that she intends to do? You're going to sic the FBI on peaceful protesters?
Where are
that
they?
doesn't violate libertarian orthodoxy?
Yeah, where are
That's
the
not
libertarians?
a red line for you?
Where's their statement? Where's Dave Smith? Has Dave Smith done anything about that? Maybe he has. I don't know. I haven't heard it. I would think we would have heard about it.
Yeah.
This is about power and access. They don't want to admit it. Look, there used to be a bar when I lived in the East Village across the street from me. And it was very dark and very punk and very mysterious. And you'd have people in there with piercings and tattoos and all this shit. And if you sidled up and you listened to their conversation, you know what they'd be talking about? Yeah, so I started in distribution, but now I'm in marketing.
Right.
That's what the libertarians are. The libertarians are trying to pretend to be all edgy. Punk rock, they're just fucking Republicans. That's all.
Well, the ones that refuse, the ones that
these libertarians. Yeah, I'm not saying every libertarian.
You're talking about the Mises Caucus, basically.
The Mises Caucus, they are, as you say, it's a pack for the Republican Party because for the same reason Sunrise Movement and our revolution bent the knee. It's a lot easier to have that access. There are a lot of opportunities to come with that access, especially when you look at somebody like Dave Smith. This is a business for him. He's not a social worker. He's making money, and there's no money to be made in backing the gay guy with 0.03% support.
Yeah. And that's what I think it ultimately came down to. I think he was just off-brand for the Mises Caucus. He was just off-brand.
It was off-brand. Exactly.
Right?
They're not really libertarians.
Right. Well, the other thing, this is the other thing. And look, I'm not a libertarian, so I don't agree with Chase Oliver on all these points. But here we go. So Nick Sorter, this is a MAGA Twitter handle here. The Libertarians just nominated Chase Oliver, so this is back in May, who has publicly called for transing children, mask and vax mandates, which is not true, of course. They assume that because there's a picture of him in the mask there. And where was his party correcting the record on that? They didn't do shit for this guy. They just hung this guy out to dry because he signaled wrong, because he coded wrong in their mind. Men and women's sports, open borders. Now, as I understand, he is for those other three things, and this is part of why I'm not a libertarian. Like, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that I disagree with him about, but none of that is inconsistent with libertarianism.
Thunderdome, baby.
Yeah, that's libertarianism.
Thunderdome.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
You want to cut off his dick? Well, it's your kid.
Yeah, the market will sort it out. right?
Yep.
I mean, that's basically
if
what
people
they
don't
think.
like men and women's sports, they'll take care of it. They'll beat them up, and no police, no
Right.
nothing. People will work it out among themselves.
They'll buy
Why
their
should
own
the
sports
state get
league.
involved in that?
Right.
Yeah, they'll buy their own sports league. Everyone can do that, right?
Right.
Yeah, this is why libertarianism is absurd on the face of it, but these are not anti-libertarian positions. And if you don't like that, if you want the government to intervene in these areas, just admit you're a fucking Republican.
You have a party for that. It's called the Republican Party. Yes.
Right.
That's the thing.
You want to cut regulations, you want to cut government spending, and you're culturally conservative.
There you go.
You're a Republican.
There you go. Pretty simple. Pretty simple stuff. But to try and use that as a wedge, as if that's over the line. And I understand, Dave Smith, well, you fell for the propaganda. It was an offense, right? Well, you didn't create these orders, but you followed orders.
So Trump did it? Trump did
that's
it? Fall for the
what
propaganda?
I don't understand. Like, that's at the end
Trump
of the day,
was
that's
the
what
propaganda.
this is about. He was the propaganda. He was overseeing this response. He just bragged about it last fucking week. He bragged about it. He says we had incredible public health policies. I just showed that to you. So I'm not saying that tweet can't rub you the wrong way as, whatever, if you consider it a virtue signal or an offense that you followed orders. I'm not saying that can't rub you the wrong way. I'm saying, does that cross a red line that Donald Trump doesn't cross? That's the thing. And Dave Smith calls that apples and oranges. No, it's not apples and oranges. You back Donald Trump over your party's nominee, citing this as a red line for many in your base, particularly in your caucus, that the mask Thanksgiving tweet was a thing. So even if that rubs you the wrong way, how is that crossing a line that Donald Trump hasn't crossed on this issue? Not to mention all the other ones, not to mention genocide in Gaza, not to mention aggressive policing of dissident speech on college campuses, all extraordinarily anti-libertarian points of view. Somehow, this guy has not crossed your red line, but Chase Oliver has? Yeah, that's opportunism. That's all that is. That's jockeying for position. That's jockeying for power. And look, if you want to do that, you can go ahead and do that. That's mostly what politics is. I get it. But then don't ever chide a liberal for voting Democrat again. Don't ever chide a traditional conservative for voting Republican again. You're not participating in third-party politics if you're giving into that line of thought. If you've had a change of heart and you said, hey, you know what? Maybe this third-party thing isn't the way to go. Maybe we need to work within the system. And so I made a calculated formulation that I had more influence with Trump. Okay, fine. Then turn in your libertarian card and register as a Republican because that is functionally all you are.
Yeah, but then you lose the cool branding.
Right. Then you lose the branding. Right. That's the flaw in that plan. Damn. Almost had it figured out. All right. We will keep going here. Basil Eshkoff, thanks for the $20. Do you think a Black Swan event will usher in a real January 6th this time? No.
I'll be back in a minute.
Oh, okay. All right. Russell's going to head out for a moment. Ryan Martin, to answer your question, Basil, no, I don't think a Black Swan event will usher in a real January 6th this time. I don't see them. I don't see any real obstruction to Trump's going in, at least not oriented around a sort of groundswell of liberal opposition. Obviously, deep state interventions are always a possibility, as we've seen this cycle. Ryan Martin, thanks for the $25. Gents, congrats on the channel growth and road to 100,000 subscribers. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that very much. Yasim Miller, thanks for the $10. Hold on. I'll read that to Russ when he's back because that's addressed to him. Thank you. DC, thanks for the $2. Been calling out LP Mises Caucus grifters for years. That's right. DC is a libertarian. And so I'm glad you're watching, DC, and thanks for that input. Seb Griffiths, libertarians are just Republicans that smoke weed. Yes, that's well said. Well said, Seb. Appreciate that. Furrow Squeen, already had that one. Thank you, Furrow Squeen. Oops, redo. Sachs noted that New York Times had called the Russian invasion unprovoked 24 times as of May. Okay, thank you, John M. Appreciate that. Here we go. Let's see what we got here. We have some more coming in. Yep. All right. Okay. While Russ is gone, we have one more ad to read. We're reading 3 today because we are off for Thanksgiving. So I'll do this one here. Last ad read of the day. So this is an excerpt from another book, and this book is by Andrew Richard Malcolm. It's called Die Coast by Cecilia, and an excerpt is read by Andrew Malcolm in the movie Heidi's Friend Diogenes. The reading is a story about Einstein's philosophical friendship with Hedwig, born 1916 to 1921, and it overlaps a videographic exploration of the COVID era 2021 to 2023. In 1920, Bad Nauheim, Einstein had a confrontation with Johannes Stark, later described by Max Born as the moment that the great danger of anti-Semitism to German science first appeared. These events are juxtaposed against COVID-era science as illuminated through the eyes of John Campbell, Russell Brand, Ursula Franklin, and Malcolm himself. You can find the excerpt at andrewrichardmalcolm.com, as well as the paperback and ebook. You can also order the book through your local bookstore. Check it out, dissidents, and much love to the community. So you can get that book at andrewrichardmalcolm.com. Stock up on your dissident holiday reading list as we head into the holiday season. Thank you, Andrew, and check that out, andrewrichardmalcolm.com. All righty. Okay. Why don't we do some more Rumble rants here? We got some more. Do we have some more super chats too? I think we do. Yes. Okay, let me read Yasim, since this was for Russell. Yasim Miller says, Russell, your Seychelles pronunciation comment about Americans made me laugh so hard, even on a busy workday when I felt like I was about to lose my mind. Thank you.
Well, apparently it was also a location on Survivor. Like, that makes sense to me that it's been featured in TV shows, and that's why you're getting all these people who know how to pronounce it.
So Survivor, so you looked it up, it was Survivor too?
No, so somebody said in the chat it was a location on Survivor also.
All right, that kind of makes sense.
So I think between the two of those, if it's been well represented in pop culture like that, because that just didn't make any sense to me. What? You got all these fucking Americans who know how to pronounce this? No way. No way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It just didn't make any sense. I had never heard of it. And when I looked it up, I'm like, did any historically significant event happen here that I should know about? No.
Right.
Seems to be just a random archipelago, as they say. Knock knock, who's there? Babs Olva. Babs Olva who? Geez, I don't know Babs, but I do know that you really let your Olva go to the dogs. Ovula. Oh, Ovula. Babs Ovula. I don't know Babs, but I do know that you've really let your Ovula go to the dogs. Prizes to people who know.
Okay.
I don't know.
That wouldn't be among us, so I guess we don't get a prize.
Guess we don't get a prize. Dr. Durkin says, why does Dave Smith always look greasy? I don't know. I think he's a pretty handsome guy, but I don't. I think he's off the mark on that. Handsome Dave Smith. Especially we should call him Handsome Dave. Nocturnal Human. In 2020, I wore a mask when I knew it didn't stop the germs for YouTube because it kept my face warm during the winter. I don't care if anyone still wears one. It doesn't affect me. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. When I see a person walking around in there's a woman I saw the other day who was driving around. She's walking around outside with nobody around with a mask around her face. And, when I see that, what I see is like, look, if we're all being honest here, that COVID event was a traumatic event. It was a collective trauma that we all went through. And no matter what your opinions about it are, it was definitely a trauma. It definitely put us through the ringer, through the psychological ringer, and many of us the physical ringer.
Fucked up, man.
Yeah,
it was fucked up.
It was fucked up. And so when I see a person wearing a mask alone in a field with nothing, what I see is a person who processed that trauma differently from me. Like, that's honestly all I see. Like, I'm not going to,
that's very humanitarian.
Yeah, like, what am I got to judge them for? Like, I'm a picture of psychological health. I'm the most mentally healthy guy there is. If I did, you think I'd be doing this shit for a living? Like, I'm not really going to, like, it doesn't anger me. It doesn't bother me. Like, it's just, that's someone who went through a thing and they, they're carrying that with them in a way that I'm not. And I'm going to judge them for it? It doesn't affect me. Unless they're telling other people what to do, I do not get into litigating the personal choices of other people. That to me is what wokeness is. That's what wokeness is. It's litigating the personal choices of other people as if they owe it to you or to society to conduct their personal business a certain way.
That's surprisingly humane for a misanthrope.
Yeah, well, I'm a nice guy. What can I say? Yeah.
At the end of the day, when all's said and done.
At the end of the day. But I mean, seriously, like that's what I see. I don't freak out when I gotta roll down the window and curse her out. I mean, it's what it is.
I mean, I personally, I'm a libertarian in my soul, in that I have always had this attitude. I don't give a fuck what you do. Just don't bother me.
Right.
That's it. Like, isn't that the ultimate libertarian perspective? Like, do whatever you want.
Right.
Yes, I think children have special protections because they're not developed enough to make choices for themselves.
Right.
But if you're a full-grown adult, you're not hurting anybody, you're not bothering me, you're not asking me for anything, do it. I don't give a shit what you do.
Right. Right.
I understand why you would.
Yeah, I don't understand why you would. And like I said, I do understand you want to make the point that him on the Thanksgiving was a moment that, I guess the libertarians wanted a "don't tread on me" moment there, which I understand. Like, I understand that how that could strike you as a wrong note, but is it over the line in a way that Trump is not? That's the point. That's the question. Does it cross a line that Trump has not crossed with every authoritarian measure he has advocated for?
Well, that's what's
can't
absurd.
argue that.
That's what's absurd. It's a great example. The kindest possible interpretation is it's the Upton Sinclair thing.
Right.
A man has a tremendous capacity not to see a thing when his income depends on his not seeing it.
Right. Exactly. Trump has had shit administration picks, but imagine he picks Tony Hinchcliffe as press secretary. He can roast the press every week. Yeah, there you go. That would be funny. He already got that. What's her name? That Carolyn Levitt.
That could win me over.
Yeah, that would be fun. Who was the other guy? He had a who was the other one people were joking about? I forget. He ended up going with that Carolyn Levitt though. Love the woke right shtick. Please keep it up. Stick it to these hypocrites. Separate the wheat from the chaff, from the chaff. Thank you, Doc Durkin. Appreciate that very much. Okay, let's go here to Quintessential. If I had meager benefits, sick leave, I'd mask up often from fear of capitalism. Even now, e.g. in crowded NYC, more than anything makes understandable. Even in crowded NYC, more than anything makes understandable. Thank you, Quintessential, for that. Sorry, I didn't quite get the last part of that, but hope I did okay for you. Thank you for the donation. RBGH Fam says, Chase Oliver's a woke twat. Sorry, guys. Stopping World War III is more important than voting for that knob to get 1%. Well, that's what I mean. Like, woke how? Because he has a rainbow flag and wears a mask? Like how does his policy set violate libertarian orthodoxy is what I'm asking.
Well, see, that's the thing. And if you watch the show, we're not for those things. No. We're not for the trans children. We're not for the men in sports.
That's why I didn't vote for him.
Right, but it is libertarian.
Yeah.
Right, because the government's not supposed to get involved. Right, so the government stays out of it. The open borders, sure. Like, okay, so you don't believe in those things, so maybe you realize that libertarianism is unworkable.
Right.
Great.
Right.
So do we. That's why we're not libertarians.
Right. Exactly.
And we don't support those things. And to not support those things, guess what you need? A government to stop people from doing it.
Right. Like, to say he's woke because he wears a because he went to a pride parade with a mask on. You're saying what you're saying is he signals woke. He codes woke. He's branded woke because you associate those things with woke.
Right.
And what I'm saying is
what does he want the government to get involved in your life?
What does he want to impose on you? That to me is the only thing that really matters when you're assessing the degree to which this guy belongs in the Libertarian Party or is a Libertarian nominee. I mean, to me, that's the more operative question. And to me, it's woke to be concerned with what the fuck he does. Like, that to me is what wokeness is. When I think of woke people, I think of people who make other people's business their business because other people's behavior makes you uncomfortable. Right, you're a busybody. Okay, so he wore a pride flag, bicycle riding shirt, whatever the fuck they call them, and went to a pride parade. Okay, I mean, what is he making you do that? No. Okay, so that's his lifestyle. That's how he presents. You don't have to love it, but for you to get so triggered by it that you'd rather vote for Donald Trump, who violates libertarian orthodoxy in countless ways, yeah, to me, that's a warped priority set, right?
And I'm sorry, the World War III thing, that's not working out so good based on the cabinet picks,
right?
And the spokespeople he's had going out there, whose advice and suggestions have ranged from threatening Putin with the promise of giving more arms to Ukraine to I'm hand in glove with Anthony Blinken.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
I'm sorry. I must be missing the stopping World War III part.
Well, yes, that too.
Look,
that
man.
Too.
Hey. As I said, it was really nice to be part of a political party. I would love it if this all works out. I think these guys are going to crash the economy. And from what we can see of what Trump is picking, honestly, it's much worse than I thought it would be. Much worse. These are not people that you would pick if you're looking to turn down the temperature on international affairs. Right. And Trump being as lazy as he is, you can't say, oh, well, he's going to put Rubio and everybody in there and then he's just going to neutralize them. He's not going to do shit. He's going to be going up on stage and doing his Rodney Dangerfield thing. I tell you, you know what it's like to meet a president? I'll tell you. That's all he's in it for, man. He's got the best nightclub in the world. That's it. He's going to let these people run wild. And, yeah, it's going to break apart. It's the way it'll play out if we're not all dead in a nuclear war. It is going to be interesting because once Donald Trump has no legitimacy anymore, where'd all these people go? Like that's when you're going to see a total collapse in belief in institutions and government. They're not going to have anywhere to go. Where are they going to go? That's going to be some Kurt Vonnegut shit right there.
Yes, indeed. And speaking of the economy, that's kind of what our next, our final two segments of the day are focused on. So why don't we get to this one here? All right. So Russ, you found this article. You'll read this, and then we got a video, brief video after.
All right. So California farmers, there's a good example of what we're talking about. California farmers were big Trump backers. They may be on a collision course over immigrant deportation. A paradox is settled across California's velvet green fields and orchards. California farmers, who are some of the most ardent supporters of Donald Trump, would seem to be on a collision course with one of the president-elect's most important campaign promises. Trump has pledged to carry out mass deportations of undocumented immigrants across the country, including, he has said in recent days, rounding up people and putting them in newly built detention camps. If any such effort penetrated California's heartland, where half the fruits and vegetables consumed in the U.S. are grown, it almost surely would decimate the workforce that farmers rely on to plant and harvest their crops. At least half of the state's 162,000 farm workers are undocumented, according to estimates from the Federal Department of Labor and research conducted by UC Merced. Without sufficient workers, food would rot in the fields, sending grocery prices skyrocketing. And yet, farmers are not railing in protest. Many say they expect the president will support their workforce needs, either through a robust legalization program for workers already here, or by leaving farms to be and focusing enforcement elsewhere. Some are also pushing the government to make it easier for them to import temporary guest workers under the H-2A visa program, which allows farms to hire seasonal agricultural workers when the domestic labor supply falls short. Caroline Levitt, a spokesperson for the Trump-Vance transition team, did not respond to questions about agricultural workers specifically, but said, quote, "The American people re-elected President Trump by a resounding margin, giving him a mandate to implement the promises he made on the campaign trail, like deporting migrant criminals and restoring our economic greatness. He will deliver." Now that's an interesting bit of evasion there.
Yes.
Notice she didn't say migrants. She said migrant criminals.
Yeah, this is a pattern now. They're starting to back off this a little bit as they realize the impracticality of it. I don't think the inhumanity of it really bothers them very much, but I think they're realizing this is not as workable as we thought, especially with inflation already hurting people.
I was just going to say, we ran on bringing down inflation.
Yeah.
$12 lettuce is not going to play well with our base. And don't tell me about how Americans will work these jobs. Americans can barely get down the block, much less spend a day in the fields. In that context, Steve Scaroni, the founder of one of the largest guest worker companies in the country, Fresh Harvest, predicted an increased demand for the thousands of workers his company brings in each year from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador for 3 to 10 month stints picking lettuce, strawberries, and other crops. Quote, most farmers are realizing that they're going to need to implement the H-2A program at some level to assure that they have labor, Scaroni said, because we just don't know what the deportation is going to look like. Farm workers and their advocates are anxious both at the prospect of mass deportations and a huge expansion of guest worker programs that in the past have spawned complaints about shorted paychecks, unpaid travel time, and unsafe housing. Now, we always want to play it fair. We always want to play it straight. The strange thing about this to me, this particular paragraph, that doesn't happen to undocumented workers. Like that's particular to guest worker programs. Like why would you be in more danger from shorted paychecks from a program that presumably would have some kind of accountability than you would from being a guy with no papers who's getting paid under the table? I would think you'd be more at risk of that.
Well, I think there's no real accountability. Don't they get into this article where, like, yeah, they basically, the people who are supposed to hold this system together tend to look the other way and not do the proper vetting. They tend to look
the other way, but I can't see the risk as, presumably, you could complain to say, yeah, I'm not saying they don't fuck them. I'm not saying this is false. Right. But presumably, at the very least, there'd be some kind of government agency to complain to. It probably won't do anything. But in any case, why would it be worse? Like, why would it increase the risk of that?
That's a good question.
Sarah, a farm worker living in Riverside County who asked to be identified by only her first name because she is undocumented, said she and fellow workers harvesting cilantro in the eastern Coachella Valley share a pervasive sense of dread. Every year, the Coachella Festival, the music is awful. My children scream. Undocumented people are the ones who are really doing the tough work, she said, because we need to make money to feed our children and elderly. Asked about the calls to expand the H-2A program, Sarah responded, why not give work permits to the people who are already here instead of bringing more people when there are lots of farm workers here already? For decades, California farmers and the workers who tend their crops have been engaged in a complicated ballet. It is technically illegal for farmers to hire undocumented workers, but some people in the industry say it happens regularly, an assertion research backs up. One major hiring route is through farm labor contractors who seek out workers, request their government paperwork, and dispatch the worker to farms during harvest and planting seasons. The contractors routinely tell farmers that the workers have valid paperwork, but according to people knowledgeable about the industry, they don't always verify that paperwork. Quote, our hard stance is we are not document experts, said one contractor, who asked not to be identified to discuss sensitive legal matters. He noted that workers give him social security numbers, and months later, he said, he often receives notice from the government informing him that many of those numbers do not match the names the workers have given. But by then, the harvest is over, and the workers are gone. Quote, everybody knows how the game is played, he said. Given this state of affairs, he predicted, if any of these mass deportations happen, it's going to be catastrophic for the industry. It's not yet clear how Trump's rhetoric on deportations will play out. He and his advisors have stressed that their first priority will be criminals and those who pose a threat to national security. It is possible that most farm workers, documented or not, would be unaffected. Following the deportation sweeps of 1954, according to UCLA history professor Kelly Hernandez, that was under Eisenhower, it was called Operation Wetback, I shit you not.
Yep.
Border Patrol officers pressed farmers, particularly in South Texas, to stop hiring undocumented workers and instead avail themselves of the Bracero program. That guest worker program was launched during World War II to bring Mexican workers to America's fields, while American workers were fighting overseas, and continued to grow after the war ended. According to statistics from the University of Colorado, the number of braceros in the United States jumped by more than 100% from 1952 to 1956, rising to 445,000. Many ultimately settled in the U.S., but while in the program, many were subject to exploitation, working long hours for little money and facing demeaning treatment at work sites, which again, I don't see how that's particular to legal programs. I would imagine that's at least as bad, if not worse, for someone who's not in some kind of a program. Antonio De Laura Brust, a spokesperson for the UFW, said he fears similar abuses could follow an expansion of the H-2A program. Again, this whole formulation doesn't make any sense to me. Delora Brust called the program a recipe for exploitation because a worker's permission to be in the country is tied to the employer. Employers control nearly every aspect of the workers' lives, he said, which I would imagine is true if you're undocumented. Okay, so it sounds like the signals we're getting from them, and we covered this with Rand Paul the other day, it looks like what they're going to do is go after criminals and get a lot of favorable publicity from their base off that, I would imagine. Look, we're rounding up all the people. Right. They emptied out their jails in Venezuela. We're going after them. Do they go further than that? As they point out, a lot of people will say, yeah, we want to get rid of these people. They don't want to pay $20 for cucumbers. Right. And that is what would happen if you got rid of all of these farm workers. And don't tell me Americans would do those jobs. Wait, what is it? What is the obesity rate? It's something like 70% of Americans are obese. Don't tell me they're going out in the fields to pick fucking strawberries all of a sudden.
Yeah, here's the work. We can't play the sound because there's copyrighted music, but this is the work for what, 10 hours a day? No American is going to do this for a living wage. This is why I don't think, this is why a lot of this is not thought through, I don't think. People who think that immigrants are taking good paying jobs in this respect, now, obviously there are other industries, construction being one of them, right, which you've talked about. But as it pertains to farming, the food companies are not going to pay American workers $25 an hour to do this. That's not going to happen. They're going to find a way to not do that. What you will have is choked supply and increased prices on top of a market that is already inflated. And so you start rounding people up, and what did the article say? Just about half of the farming workforce in these fields is undocumented labor.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that adds up pretty quick if you're talking about a true mass deportation. How is the market going to absorb that?
You're literally talking about crops rotting in the fields.
Well, yeah, of course.
There won't be anyone to pick it.
How could it not? How could it not? So how is that
I mean,
workable?
I don't know, though, Keaton. Look, maybe we can combine the Make America Healthy Again agenda with the immigrant agenda and get the Americans out there getting some exercise, picking that lettuce.
Yeah, there you go. That's something. That's something. Well, here's Scott Jennings, who, is a conservative pundit on CNN. We've been seeing quite a lot of him lately. He responds to a question from Jake Tapper about what a mass deportation of workers would do to the markets, and here's his answer.
Two things. Number one, Donald Trump was elected to do this. He ran on it, made it clear what he wanted to do. The American people voted for it. And so some people are watching this going, thank God, a politician who's planning to follow through on their promises. Number two, there's like 1.3 to 1.6 million illegal immigrants who've already received deportation orders from a court. I think you could start there. Number three, there's another population of people who are violent. You could also go there before you ever get to people who are sort of working in industries. And maybe during the course of all that time, maybe, just maybe, the Congress and the White House could figure something out about how to balance our illegal immigration crisis with the need for agricultural labor. Final point, I don't remember anybody having these kinds of meltdowns when Barack Obama deported 5 million people. It is not uncommon for the executive branch to deport illegal immigrants. It happens in every administration. Obama deported more than most. And I don't remember any of this kind of meltdown, and the crisis has only gotten worse. So I think Donald Trump's doing the right thing, and most Republicans would agree it is a national emergency.
So that is a pro. He's saying we're going to start with the people who've already received their deportation orders. Then we're going to go to the criminals. While we're doing that, we'll figure out something to do about these workers. And by the way, no one complained about this when Obama did it, right? Like he put the answer to the question in the middle of all of the talking points because they don't have an answer to this. They're not going to be able to do this.
They're going to have to go guest worker.
Yeah, they're going to have to go. Well, that's what Rand Paul said. He says they're going to have to give work permits, which at that point, like, look, I understand people saying you should deport violent criminals. I don't think anybody's against that. But
Chase Oliver is.
Yeah, Chase Oliver is. Yeah, exactly. Who's the government to tell you where you can go and who you can kill? I mean, it's not the role of the government to step in that situation. No, but like beyond that, I just don't see how they can implement this without disrupting markets. Because don't forget, there's inflation already. They're already talking about tariffs, so that's going to be more inflation. Now you're talking about getting rid of half of the workforce that picks the fruit. I mean, it just doesn't seem workable.
Well, and whose back is that going to land on the most? A lot of the MAGA base.
Exactly. Well, this is why the messaging around the economy was so tied to immigration. Like I said, I tweeted out a few days ago, the Trump term 2 seems to be Reaganomics with illegal immigrants as the new welfare queen. You know, Reagan demagogued against the welfare queen as the poor person who's holding the middle class back from becoming rich. And that's kind of the role the illegal immigrant plays in this formulation. The problem is, of course, that there is no payoff. Where's the payoff? Once they get rid of the immigrants, how does that improve economic conditions? It doesn't, especially when you're looking at this, which is only going to drive inflation up more and disrupt the market more.
Yeah, I would imagine, hey, should we have millions of people in the country that we can't keep track of and we don't know that they're here? No. But if you're really going to convert millions of farm workers to a guest worker program, you're going to have to create some kind of federal bureaucracy that probably doesn't exist, or you're going to have to greatly expand one that does. And yeah, you're going to have to put a whole system in place. It's not something you're just going to be able to do with a snap of your fingers. And yes, unless you want to pay $20 for lettuce, deporting all of the illegal agricultural workers, that's a non-starter. It's a non-starter. And Americans are not taking those jobs. There was a section of that article that talked about what they get paid. And I think in California, what did they say? It's actually about 20. It's around 20 an hour. You are not going to get millions of Americans who are going to go do that, even for 20 an hour. They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
You can make it 50 an hour. I literally don't think you have enough Americans in physical condition
who could do that. Right. Yeah. It's a huge workforce. Yeah. Yep. I agree. And so, yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to follow through on this. I don't think it's a promise.
Not on that scale.
Not on that scale.
They're gonna get rid of criminals, and they're gonna make a big show of getting out the criminals. Right. But the agricultural workers, they're gonna have to go guest worker, and then they're gonna have to create bureaucracy.
Right.
Maybe move some of those workers that the Doge people are cutting from one part of the government and move them to keeping track of millions of farm workers.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds like a plan. Black Spock, thanks for the $2. Appreciate that. Blake
Oh,
Lensing.
Black Spock. I haven't heard from you in a while.
Oh, you remember Black Spock?
Yeah, of course I do.
Who's Black Spock?
He's been on our channel for a while.
You're thinking of Black Freud.
No. Black Spock's been around for a while.
Oh, Black Spock? Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, Black
I mean,
Spock.
it might be. Maybe he doesn't chat. Maybe I just see his comments.
Maybe just see the comments.
I see his comments in the comment section.
All right, 'cause I only have the super
I'm a
chats here.
dork, so I'm the kind of person who would.
Who would remember the
that would
comments
stick
names.
with.
Okay. Got it. Well, I apologize, Black Spock, if I did not remember you. That was rude of me. But thank you for the donation. Blake Lensing, Dave Smith's politics, I inhaled, but I didn't smoke. Thank you, Blake Lensing. I like that's funny. Virtuoso, I inhaled, but I didn't smoke. That's a good one. I said it on the Post-Duopoly show, and I'll say it here, that the Libertarian Party is just a corporate-backed GOP with Scientology cult sensibilities. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Thank you, Virtuoso. BMK, have you guys heard of Sao Tome and Principe? Principe? No, I have not. SAOTOME. Russell, have you heard of that? I don't think so.
Heard of what?
Sao Tome. I've not heard of that. James Turner says so many friendships ruined by COVID and vaccine fights. Yep, it was a gauntlet. It was definitely a gauntlet. It was again, like I said, I think it was a collective trauma that we all went through. I think everybody lost their heads during that, myself included. You know, you didn't notice at the time, but then you look back, you're like, yeah, that was pretty tough. That was pretty difficult.
That was, hey, and I don't want to be insensitive. I know, a lot of bad shit happened for a lot of people, and I went through some stuff in my head, but it was good stuff. Like in the end, I came out of COVID much better than I went in a lot of ways. I definitely took advantage of the time, but I also had the opportunity to do that. I didn't have the kinds of responsibilities some people had during that, where they couldn't go on a journey of self-discovery. Not everyone was lucky enough to have the space to do that.
No, it was fucked up. The whole thing of it was just, I mean, everything from the fear and the death and just the bleakness of it all was just it was a gauntlet. And just even the way everything was handled. I mean, I was on unemployment, not a great unemployment, but they had the $600 boost to the unemployment. But then I decided that I wanted to go work for UPS because they have a really good union. So I got rid of the unemployment and I went and I worked at the warehouse from Labor Day through the holidays. And they pulled this bullshit where they told me, because I asked, okay, so when am I getting on the books?
Weren't you still doing that when we were first doing the podcast?
Yeah, we were doing the show and I was doing that. Yeah,
you were doing that. Yeah.
And it was crazy. They said, so the rule was after 30 days probation, you get invited to join the union, assuming you're good enough to. And we sign you up. And that's why I wanted to do it, because I had, family, young twins at the time. They were 2. And, our careers had all been, both my wife and I, our fields had been just totally wiped out by COVID, craft shows and the like. And so I said, okay, all right, this sounds good. So I went off the unemployment to do that, and the pay was terrible. It was shit. But I'm like, you know what? The benefits are good, and I could do it overnight. So I could still work part-time during the day, and I'll get all the benefits for me and the family taken care of. And, by 8 o'clock, I'll be coming home from work. And then if I have to work a few more hours, something throughout the day, I could piece that in. And they told me right before Christmas, right before the Thanksgiving to Christmas transition, I said, so when am I getting my union packet? They said, well, we closed the books October 1st, which was like 28 days into my 30-day probation. So I was like, what does that mean? They said, well, we're keeping you on as seasonal, and we'll let you know after the holidays if we're going to take you on full-time. And I'm like, well, fuck that. Fuck this. I'm not busting my, because the money was terrible. And like the only reason I'm doing this is for potential career advancement with like benefits and stuff. I'm not going to fucking dick around here for $14 an hour in the dead of night in 3-degree weather, packing, loading trucks, only to be told we don't need you anymore. Well, that's the thing. At the time, you could make good money delivering food because the restaurants were mostly closed, and you could make good money ride sharing. I could like listen to podcasts for like $30 an hour now and drive people's Wendy's to them. I'm not doing this for. So I leave. And like 3 weeks after I quit, I get a packet from the union, whatever it was, the Teamsters, to join. That's how disorganized they were. Because that was the COVID Christmas where they were taking on anybody who they... So I could have actually stayed on, but they dicked me around. And then once the driving dried up, now you're back and you don't have the unemployment anymore because now you got to hustle because you gave it up to do. So, I mean, that's a very minor sob story. It's really not a sob story at all, but it's just an example of the stress you were put through. Every decision had so much weight behind it because do I take the government benefits or do I try to get a job? And what's going to happen to this job? Is there going to be another variant that's going to shut everything down again? And then what's going to happen? Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a fucking nightmare. And you know, I had it relatively easy. I'm not complaining. You know, I had a family that I spent a lot of time with at home. You know, I was around people I loved the whole time. You know, I wasn't trapped alone in a room, you know, so I had it easy. But I'm saying, even for me, for everybody, there was something that affected everybody. Nobody can come out of that being like, nah, that was it. No worries. No, and I'm a misanthrope. I basically live a lockdown lifestyle now. Like I never leave the house anyway. But even me, it was something.
Yeah. I definitely, once I saw what it was going to be, I said, okay, well, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to have the government send you money to do everything you say you would do if you didn't have to work and if you didn't have other distractions. You have no distractions, none. So I learned Spanish, finished the first draft of my novel. Quitting smoking was the big thing. Yes. That is where I went through a big mental journey that honestly I could not have done if I had responsibilities. Because I lost my shit for like a couple of months, man. Like I could not have. You can't do that. If you have to go, if you got to work a job, exactly. It gave me the space to just have a total fucking meltdown, and that was why I did it. I think I knew if I don't quit now, I never will.
Right. Yep. So you took advantage. Hashcat, Seychelles, is it good for registering business to avoid taxes and lots of regulations? Oh, is that why you guys know what it is? All right, see, look, we're learning all about Seychelles. We should do a special report on Seychelles for us for Sunday. Do a series on the newfound Seychelles.
I'll do a video essay.
Yes. Landrew, $100. Let's have a cowbell for Landrew. Thank you, Landrew. Says, I have the solution on immigration. Stop the sanctions. Free Palestine. Absolutely, yes. Well, that's the huge part of it.
I am Landrew. Landrew is dead.
And Brent Yoendo, thank you, Landrew, very much. That's very kind of you. Brent Yoendo says, do you guys hug each other when you meet up? We do. We do. We give each other a hug when we meet up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. We're not even MAGA, and we still hug.
Yeah.
All right, let's we got one more segment before we wish you guys a happy Thanksgiving. Don't forget, in fact, we may as well do the scroll now. I was going to do it after this segment, but we may as well do it now since we are doing a supporter stream.
I gotta go meet someone for dinner. Let's make this happen.
Let's make this happen. All right. Well, folks, you can become a member of the show by going to patreon.com/do-dissidents. That include your name up in here on the patron scroll. Also get call-in access to our weekly Q&As every Sunday night. And you get access to our movie clubs and special supporter streams. So you can go to patreon.com/do-dissidents, do-dissidents.locals.com, or join our Substack. Locals is what we're pushing right now, do-dissidents.locals.com. That's if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Rumble, you can hit that bright red join button underneath the screen and sign up for as little as $5 a month. It helps tremendously to safeguard the show, censorship-proof the show, and obviously comes with the good karma of supporting independent media. So we have a patron-exclusive stream tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern, and then we have movie night, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Saturday, November 30th, which is the last night of the month. So we got a couple of good Easter eggs and treats for the supporters this week. So sign up, do-dissidents.locals.com. It's $5 a month. We make it worth your while as best we can. Thank you very much for your support. You guys are the backbone of the show. Goldfish Memory says, hey, dudes. Hey, Goldfish. Soccer Papa says, I just received multiple emails from various industrial equipment manufacturers announcing price increases referencing tariffs. Wow. All right.
Seriously?
Wow.
Well, that's
Yeah.
coming up next.
Coming up next, that's our last piece. Lori Lambay, let's not forget that true leftists can combine forces with libertarians in anti-war efforts. I would rather hang with libertarians than Democrats. Yeah, generally, I think that's true.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
generally,
These
I
aren't
think that's true.
libertarians, though. They're Republicans.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. Hamhawk30, thanks for the $5. California farmers, if you plant it, they will come. Thank you, Hamhawk30. Appreciate that. All right, let's get this going. Last segment of the day. One more song. We're going to talk tariffs.
All right. So this is another major part of the Trump economic agenda. Trump came out and announced his plan for tariffs, and China, Mexico, and Canada were not very happy about it. Officials in China, Mexico, and Canada criticized Tuesday a pledge made by President-elect Donald Trump on social media to impose new tariffs on all three of the United States' largest trading partners on the first day of his presidency. Trump said the move, which appears to violate the terms of a free trade deal Trump signed into law in 2020, is aimed at clamping down on drugs, fentanyl especially, and migrants crossing into the U.S. illegally. So let's see what our illustrious president-elect had to say. As everyone is aware, thousands of people are pouring through Mexico and Canada, bringing crime and drugs at levels never seen before. Right now, a caravan coming from Mexico, composed of thousands of people, seems to be unstoppable in its quest to come through our currently open border. On January 20th, as one of many first executive orders, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff on all products coming into the United States and its ridiculous open borders. This tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country. Both Mexico and Canada have the absolute right and power to easily solve this long-simmering problem. We hereby demand that they use this power, and until such time as they do, it is time for them to pay a very big price. I am grabbing Canada by the pussy. So coming in with a bang. There was quick pushback to Trump's comments from all three countries. Liu Pengyu, a spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington, said, "No one will win a trade war or a tariff war. And the idea of China knowingly allowing fentanyl precursors to flow into the United States runs completely counter to facts and reality." Mexico's finance ministry said in a statement the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, a trade pact Trump sponsored during his first term, provided certainty for investors. Quote, "The response to one tariff will be another until we put at risk companies that we share," Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum said, naming General Motors and Ford among others. Sheinbaum said her comments, read aloud in a press conference, were sent in a letter to Trump. Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario, Canada's most populous province, said the tariffs would be, quote, "devastating to workers and jobs in both the U.S. and Canada." A tariff is effectively a tax imposed by one country on the goods and services imported from another country. Oil is the top U.S. import from Canada, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. The largest category of goods imported to the U.S. from Mexico is cars and components for cars. The U.S. imports a significant amount of electronics from China. Some goods are exempt from tariffs because of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Trump used trade threats as a negotiating tactic during his first term. He slapped tariffs on billions of dollars of Chinese-made goods. Trump had hoped to secure a new trade deal with China, but those plans fell apart with the arrival of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020. It's unclear whether Trump will follow through on his new tariffs pledge. but imposing tariffs on U.S. trading partners was a central theme of Trump's economic agenda outlined during his presidential campaign. He appears to believe they will protect U.S. jobs, raise tax revenue, and lead to a domestic manufacturing renaissance. Many economists warn the tariffs drive up inflation and lead to higher interest rates. Tariffs are paid by importers, not by the countries from where the goods are shipped. Importers typically pass those costs along to consumers by raising the price of each product, making them more expensive. Quote, Trump got elected to lower the price of groceries. This and deportations will send grocery prices through the roof, said Bill Penzi, the owner of retailer Penzi's Spices, in emailed comments sent before Trump's announcement. Trump has said once in office he will declare a national emergency and use the military to deport illegal migrants. Quote, you can't replace China garlic with California garlic when all the people who do the work and have the knowledge in the California garlic industry have been deported, said Penzi, a frequent Trump critic. Now, we talked about that a little in the last segment. We are skeptical that they're going to deport those farm workers. Andrew Law, the founder of the Mexico Brief, a news and analysis platform, said he believes that Trump's announcement is less about tariffs and more about politics. Quote, the announcement comes right after a diplomatic squabble broke out between Mexico and Canada over Chinese imports. In response, Mexico hastily introduced a law to replace certain Chinese-made parts with Mexican-made ones. Trump sees an opening to push China further out of America's backyard, Law wrote in a commentary Tuesday. Quote, this is less a policy declaration than a move to stir up more trouble among bickering allies. The goal? To extract even more concessions from Mexico and Canada on China. He's throwing a cat among the pigeons to watch what happens. It'll probably work. So, hey, on the subject of tariffs, I'm agnostic. We need to have some expert economists on to really talk about this. You hear different things about tariffs. The idea that certain countries do take advantage of our relatively liberal trade policies while imposing tariffs themselves on American exports, this is true. This is true. So is the way to respond to that with tariffs? Will those countries back down? Will it be good for American jobs? Will it increase our own manufacturing? I tend to be very skeptical of a lot of the claims that tariffs are bad because of the people who make them. It's the same kind of people who support NAFTA, who supported the TPP. So if those people don't like the idea, it makes me say, well, maybe it's a good idea. But I don't know. I certainly don't know enough. And frankly, you look at 10 economists, they have 10 opinions on everything. I don't know that anybody really knows what the result is. I know that they promised there would be runaway inflation if Trump imposed tariffs on China the last time, and he did, and it didn't happen. Now, if he went ahead on day one and did what he's threatening to do here, yeah, I would imagine it would cause economic instability. But the guy at the end suggests he's doing a New York real estate thing here. Hey, these guys are fighting. Let's make them fight a little more. Let's see what happens. So who knows if this is actually something he would go ahead and do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that remains to be seen. I think in Trump term, the thing that's going to be interesting in Trump term too is that the momentum behind de-dollarization has really accelerated pretty greatly since he left, largely thanks to failing Joe Biden, right? Largely thanks to psycho Joe Biden. And so the extent to which countries are going to feel that they need to play ball with us, right? I think that is a question. I think that really affects your standing in a negotiation. Now, can the world move beyond America entirely now? No, I don't think it's at that point. But are we less central to the economic prospects of other countries now than we were when he left office? I think we are. And I think they are making a very deliberate choice to hasten in the era where they don't have to be very concerned with us anymore. And I think that drives our negotiating power down, which is something that maybe he's not taking into consideration, or maybe he's not taking that into consideration yet because he's pounding his chest now, seeing how they respond, and then based on that, he'll either pull the trigger or he won't. But I think that's a big difference. I mean, when we think about this, is not 2017. The world has changed pretty drastically since then, and I think the Ukraine war is a big part of that. I think, to a slightly lesser extent, I think our support for the Gaza genocide is a part of that too. People want less to do with us.
And threatening our allies with sanctions.
And threatening
if they
the allies
support
with
the
sanctions.
ICC.
That's the other thing. Trump is going to sanction the ICC, and now you have very, very high profile figures in our government suggesting that we make our allies pay a price for upholding international law. I think between Ukraine and Gaza, I think our standing in the world has really taken a massive nosedive. And that, I think, has an influence on the extent to which countries want anything to do with us. Can they afford to shut us out entirely? Not yet. Not yet, but we're a long ways further towards that than we were back in 2017. And at this rate, now that these wheels are in motion, and it doesn't seem like Trump is too keen to stop that, unfortunately, then that momentum may be already building in too severe a way for him to rein in, and for him to really see the benefits of these policies that he's looking for. Again, we don't talk about this enough because he shared a candy with Michelle, so the liberal press doesn't want to talk about it. Our prestige in the world has been plummeting since the Bush administration, because up until that point, our allies and affiliated countries, our various vassals, felt that the Pax Americana, such as it was, benefited them. That America kept things relatively stable. They kept their partners relatively prosperous. And yeah, we had these brush fire wars, but they weren't really impacted by it. The Bush administration, now he's been completely the reality of the Bush administration has been largely memory hold for the time being. But yeah, that was when the world first said, holy shit, look at all the power we've invested in the United States, and they might elect someone like that. And then we have to deal with it. He was the original Donald Trump for the world. Holy crap, they elected this dumb cowboy who is just surrounded by these crazy neocons who want to remake the Middle East in America's image of all things, which is never going to work. Any European country that had more experience in that region knew that was an insane project, and that's why most of them wanted no part of it. That's why they needed the coalition of the willing, right? Cheney dismissed them as old Europe, the Eastern European countries that had a financial incentive to get on the good side of America, the sugar daddy. They went in on it. Then Obama got elected. And yeah, we're not Obama fans, but for those countries, they said, okay, the Bush administration was an aberration. Yeah, we're back. We're back with the normal America, keeping the money flowing and keeping our investments safe and not getting into crazy wars. And then we elected Trump, and all that came back. People were already shaky about the United States after Bush. Then they elect Trump. I mean, that's oh my God. How can we allow this country to continue to have this level of power? And then, frankly, the fact that we elect a sundowning old racist, yeah, not as bad as Trump from their perspective, but still pretty bad. Still definitely under the regime of Biden, de-dollarization accelerated. Because they could see the writing on the wall, like America's on the way out. Sure. Look, if they look at their last two leaders, Trump and Biden,
Biden did not reassure them a lot. And now we elect Trump again? Yeah. So this is something that's been happening for 25 years, that the world more and more sees the United States as unreliable and dangerous. It's very dangerous because the United States holds as much power as it does, and it can no longer be seen in the lights of real politic as responsible. It's no longer seen as a responsible, stable country. You have this irresponsible country with this enormous military and the world's reserve currency. Everyone wants us to go down, but they want it to be a managed demolition so that we don't take them down with it. Hence the de-dollarization.
Right. Yep. Indeed. Well said. Doc Durkin, start by deporting illegal Israeli and Ukrainian immigrants. Thank you, Doc Durkin. Appreciate that. Tumbledye, thanks for the $5. Didn't cotton farmers use the argument that no American would do work for living wages and their businesses would die without profit, therefore slavery must continue? Well, I don't think that I don't think the offer would be open. I think, like, whether or not Americans would work for it, I don't think the companies would offer it. I don't think they would offer it. I don't think they're willing to pay Americans more money, whatever it would be, $25, $30 an hour over the $20 that they're paying the migrants now. Are they going to increase wages by 25% so that, whatever, Ray McCarthy can pick the strawberries, right? I mean, like, are they going to do that? I don't think so. I don't think the offer would be open. I think they will find a way to automate some of that. There's already videos of, machines that pick the fruits, or they'll just pick less of it and charge more for what they pick. I mean, that's what they did already. That's what they did in 2021 going into 2022. Yeah, the fruit will rot, and they'll be charging you, $15 for a carton of strawberries. And they'll put a sign on the thing, hey, we're sorry, due to supply chain issues, this fruit is more expensive. Fuck you. That's it.
I think this is endgame. Chris Hedges wrote an article a while ago where I think he predicted by 2028 the American empire as we know it is going to collapse. I think he's going to be proven right with that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate. Eric Rousseau didn't get invited to Thanksgiving dinner. I must be the crazy uncle. Sorry, Eric Rousseau. We're not really hosting a Thanksgiving this year. We're not really doing anything. I have some family commitments that I have to take care of during the day, and then I'll probably pick something up on the way home or throw something together quick. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a sad Thanksgiving here as well, all around. So you're not alone, Eric.
Everyone's having a sad Thanksgiving.
Yeah, everyone's having an underwhelming Thanksgiving. Yes. Not that my family commitments don't bring me joy. Of course they do. Right? Yes. Kawaii Cowboy, happy Tuesday. Thank you, Kawaii Cowboy. Appreciate that. Ken Minji, I tried guided meditation to deal with my anger problems. I tried Sam Harris's waking up guided meditation. Now I'm apoplectic. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah, that'll do that to you. Now I'm apoplectic. You start seething in the middle of the meditation. I'm sure that's how he intended it. Basil Beskov, thanks for the $20, says, do you believe a Black Swan event will usher in a true January 6th in 2025? Maybe you missed it. I did answer that. No, I don't think so. I think that they're not going to stop his road back to the White House. I think the people who would have done that are pretty resigned to it. And who knows, maybe some of these cabinet picks are an insurance company against a certain other kind of Black Swan event. Maybe he's like, hey, look, Marco Rubio, come on.
Yeah.
Come on, Rubio.
President Vance.
Yeah, you wanted Rubio. You wanted Rubio anyway. Secretary of State.
After the vice president, it's the Speaker of the House, right?
Speaker of the House, right? Yeah, so it'd be Johnson.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying, like, he's signaling in these picks that he's not going to be the threat to the deep state that they were really worried about. At least as far as I could see. The ones that are going to get confirmed, the ones that won't, they're already dropping like flies. So no, I don't think there will be that, Basil. Shotgun Justice, thanks for the £5. Recommend you watch Can't Get You Out of My Head by Adam Curtis. Brilliant documentary, an amazing analysis and critique of Western neoliberalism. Oh, that sounds interesting. Can't Get You Out of My Head. I will look that up. Sparky, thanks for the $10. Fentanyl was never meant for use in a non-clinical setting because risk of accidental overdose was great. FDA changed that and unleashed the curse on the U.S. Don't blame China and Mexico. Blame the FDA. Thank you, Sparky. KOAH, Music and Things. Roger Waters and Gilmore did a benefit show for Palestinian kids. Oh, okay. All right.
Did they? Did they?
Was he part of that,
Because now Gilmore is attacking him as an anti-Semite.
Yeah, this may have been a while back, but yeah, I did not.
It has to have been a while.
Maybe
back.
Yeah,
way back.
Sparky says, keep in mind, Israel has deleted many more Americans than Iran has. Remember the USS Liberty. Thank you, Sparky. And thank you, all of you. We are thankful for you. Have yourselves a happy Thanksgiving.
We are very thankful. You all have given us a great year.
Yes, what a year so far. And so we bid you farewell right now. If you want to come say hello tomorrow, we have a supporter stream tomorrow. So join our locals, dudissidents.locals.com. Special pre-Thanksgiving thank you stream to our supporters who are the backbone of the program. DoDissidents.locals.com. You could also go to Patreon or Substack. Those links are available as well. DoDissidents.substack.com or Patreon.com/DoDissidents. But Locals is what we're pushing there with Rumble. They're the free speech supporter platform. So go join our Locals. DoDissidents.locals.com. Hit the join button underneath the screen on Rumble. And we'll see you tomorrow at noon for one last interactive group live stream before, well, not group live stream, but call-in live stream before Thanksgiving. But that's it for us. We thank you guys very, very much for being here. Oh, Sparky slipped one more in. Slavery was less efficient than sharecropping and tenant farming. The South held to slavery decades after it was obsolete because they were hard-headed and didn't want to be told what to do. All righty, folks. Well, thank you, Sparky. Thanks, Super Chatters. Thanks, Rumble Ranters. Thanks to our YouTubers and our Rumblers. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. If we don't see you for the supporter stream tomorrow, then we won't see you for a few more days because we are back on the public channel Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Movie night Saturday for paid subscribers. So if you sign up for $5 a month, you'll see us twice between now and Sunday. If not, we'll see you Sunday. Until we do see you again, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you very much for being here with us this afternoon. Until we meet again, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.